Chapter 572. The woman in red hastily fled from the Yun clan. She rode a Class 1 magical beast mount and rushed towards the crowded streets. She had been injured by the Yun clan head's palm strike earlier. Although the Yun clan head's strength did not cause too much damage to her, it still affected her greatly as she had yet to condense a saint weapon. As a result, her face turned pale. "Capture her, you unfilial daughter. You actually dared to murder your father." The Yun family patriarch's violent voice came from behind. The back of the Yun family patriarch's clothes had already been dyed red with blood, and he was leading several dozen guards in hot pursuit. However, there were too many people on the bustling streets, and with the strength of these guards, they were unable to perform the movement of leaping onto roofs and vaulting over walls. Moreover, the Yun family's magical beast mounts were also extremely rare, so the majority of the guards could only use their legs to run on the streets. Only the Yun family patriarch and several loyal and devoted guards were chasing at top speed on their first-rank magical beast mounts, gradually closing the distance between the two. In this situation where one was fleeing and the other was chasing, the two of them crossed several streets and ran for a distance of 10 kilometers in Fengyang City. At this time, the distance between the two of them had been reduced from a few hundred meters to only a few dozen meters. Looking at the Yun clan head in hot pursuit, the woman in red knew that she would not be able to escape like this. After thinking for a while, she immediately rushed towards a nearby street. "Damned girl, don't waste your energy. You won't be able to escape. Hurry up and hand over the antidote." The patriarch of the Yun family shouted from behind. His expression was somewhat anxious because he could already feel that the poison in his body was slowly spreading to every part of his body. The large amount of antidotes that he had swallowed before was simply unable to remove this poison. Currently, the best method was to obtain the antidote. The woman in the red dress turned a deaf ear to the Yun family's patriarch shouts. She rode the rank 1 magic beast at full speed and finally stopped in front of a luxurious inn. She flipped off the magic beast and rushed into the inn. In her heart, she also understood that this might be her only hope of escaping. Not long after the woman in red entered the inn, the Yun clan head also arrived with a group of people. They all stopped in front of the inn. "Surround this inn and prevent this unfilial daughter from escaping. You guys follow me in." The patriarch of the Yun family immediately made some arrangements. Then he brought a few guards with him and entered the inn aggressively. At this moment, Jianqin and the others were gathered in a luxurious inn. Jianqin, although the 3 great clans of Fengyang City have lost a large number of experts, their clans still exist. Do you think we should wipe out their clans? After all, they treated you like that 2 years ago. Now that we have the strength, we must make them pay a heavy price. We can't let them off so easily. We've already killed 2 of their Earth Saint Masters, and I believe they won't let this matter rest. Even if they don't do anything for now, who can be sure that they won't do anything to us in the future? The Harito clan is not as weak as the 3 great clans of Fengyang City. We can ignore the 3 great clans of Fengyang City, but not the Harito clan. I think we should eliminate the Harito clan by the roots to prevent future trouble, Mingdong suggested. Isn't that a little too cruel? In the past, there was only one person who offended Jianqin. Now that he's dead, why should we implicate their clans? They're all innocent, Taita said with a pained expression. Jianqin pondered for a moment before replying, "That's right. Eliminate the weeds by the roots to prevent future trouble. Back then, the people of the Harito clan almost killed me. This enmity can't be resolved so easily. Moreover, we've already killed 2 of their experts, so their enmity runs deep. They'll definitely resent us as well. Even if they don't show it, they'll bury it deep in their hearts and wait for an opportunity to deal us a heavy blow in the future. If that's the case, then let's go to the Harito clan as soon as we leave Fengyang City," Mingdong said. "There's no rush. Our priority is to develop our forces. Once our flame mercenaries have a certain scale, we'll use the Harito clan as a training ground for them." Jianqin said after some thought. He also understood that the Harito clan would definitely not let the matter rest after he killed 2 of their experts. They would cause some trouble for him sooner or later, so he had to get rid of them as soon as possible. Ming Dong lowered his head and thought for a while. He felt that it made sense and said, "All right, let's do that. We'll leave the Harito clan as a training ground for the Flame Mercenaries. After our trip to Fengyang City, we've pretty much resolved our grievances from 2 years ago. It's already quite late, so let's rest for a day. We'll leave tomorrow morning and head to the first-tier cities to subdue those mercenary groups," Jianqin said. "All right, I'll head back first. The illusory flash is just too profound. I need to spend some time and effort to comprehend it. Right now, I feel like this movement technique is much more powerful than I had imagined." Ming Dong nodded and immediately stood up from his chair. Jianqin gently sighed when he heard about the illusory flash. His face was filled with regret. This movement technique was extremely profound, but unfortunately, it required Saint Force to use it. Now that he had lost his Saint Force, he no longer had the ability to use such a profound movement technique. It was a great pity. I wonder if I'll be able to use the illusory flash with chaotic force once I'm familiar with it, Jianqin thought to himself. However, he knew that that day was still extremely far away. Chaotic force was just too difficult to cultivate. The only way was to refine it from ruler armaments. If he absorbed the energy of the world, it would probably take him several years or even longer to refine a strand of chaotic force with his current rate of absorption. After all, a strand of chaotic force was equivalent to all the energy of a saint ruler. Even if he used monster cores, it would still require a tremendous amount of monster cores. Jianqin, have a good rest. We'll be leaving first. We'll be leaving first, Yu gently said to Jianqin. Afterward, they all stood up and prepared to leave. However, as soon as Ming Dong opened the door, a fiery red figure rushed in. She stumbled and almost fell to the ground. Jianqin, Ming Dong, and the others all stared at the woman who had suddenly barged in. They recognized her with a single glance as the young lady of the Yun family whom they had met a few days ago. Oi, what are you doing? Why have you suddenly barged into our room? Ming Dong frowned as he complained. The woman stood still. Her face was currently pale, and her hair was a mess from the wind. She seemed to be in a horrible shape. She was nowhere near as graceful as she was a few days ago. The woman quickly glanced past Jianqin and the others as an undetectable sliver of panic and uneasiness flashed through her eyes. After a slight hesitation, she pretended to be composed and said, "Young masters, I know you're very powerful, so I hope you can help me with something. If you can help me destroy the Yun family, I'll give you an Earth-tier battle skill in return." Although the woman in the red dress pretended to be calm, from her hurried tone, it was clear that she was not as calm as she appeared to be. Ming Dong stared at the woman in red in amusement and chuckled. "If I remember correctly, you should be the young lady of the Yun family, right? That's strange. You're the young lady of the Yun family, yet you want us to destroy your Yun family. Just what are you trying to do? Also, if you say you have an Earth-tier battle skill, then you definitely have one. Why should we believe you? Do you really think we're 3-year-olds? The woman became flustered and said, "It doesn't matter if you believe me or not. It's true that I have an Earth-tier battle skill. As long as you help me destroy the Yun family, I'll definitely give it to you." "Good, you damn girl. So you've been hiding it from me all this time." Suddenly, a voice filled with anger came from outside. The head of the Yun family had brought several burly men to the door. He subconsciously sized up Jianqin and the others in the room. Although Jianqin and the others were very young, the head of the Yun family did not dare to lower his guard when he thought of what the woman in the red dress had just said. "Young masters, I am the patriarch of the Yun family in Phoenix Sun City. This girl has already gone crazy. She even dared to assassinate her own father. Her words cannot be trusted at all. What Earth-tier battle skill? All of this is fabricated out of thin air. It cannot be trusted. I will bring this crazy girl back now. If she has disturbed you in any way, please forgive me. Please excuse me if I disturb her, the head of the Yun family courteously said to Jianchen. He was also a clever person. From what his daughter had said earlier, he understood that the identities of the youths sitting in the room were not simple. They could not be offended. After exchanging some pleasantries with Jianchen and the others, the head of the Yun family shouted to the guards behind him, "What are you guys standing there for? Hurry up and bring the young miss back." Yes, several guards responded and immediately stepped forward to try to take the red-dressed girl back. However, just as they were about to step through the door, Dugu Feng stepped forward and blocked the guards from entering. He stared at them with a sharp gaze and said coldly, "Get out. You can't just casually step into this room." The head of the Yun family's expression changed slightly. He was even more certain that the youths in front of him were not people he dared to offend. He tactfully said, "Yes, yes, yes. Naturally, we can't just casually enter. Young master, please chase this crazy girl out and let us take her away to avoid disturbing your time." Jianchen looked at the girl calmly and said, "Young miss, please leave." The girl's expression suddenly changed. She also knew that her life depended on whether Jianchen and the others were willing to help her or not. This was because she knew that her battle skill had already been exposed. The head of the Yun family would definitely not let her go after she returned. The girl looked at Jianchen with a pleading expression and said, "I beg you to help me. In return, I will give you a high-grade Earth Tier battle skill." When he heard that it was a high-grade Earth Tier battle skill, the head of the Yun family was immediately shocked. His eyes burned with passion, but he quickly concealed it and said, "This girl is crazy. Young masters, don't listen to her nonsense. She doesn't have any battle skill at all. Don't be fooled by her." The head of the Yun family wanted to rush over and seal the girl's mouth, but Dugu Feng, who was blocking them in front of the door, made him feel incomparably fearful. "Since you have an Earth Tier battle skill, why don't you go find the other big powers in Phoenix Sun City to help you? If you use an Earth Tier battle skill as a reward, I think they would be very willing to help you." Jianchen asked in return. "In the past, I didn't have the chance, and I wasn't sure if he would really help me after accepting the Earth Tier battle skill. But now, I'm at my wit's end and I have no other choice. Please believe me. If you really help me, I'll give you the family heirloom battle skill, Traceless Clear Water, that my mother passed down to me. This is a high-grade Earth Tier battle skill, and it's priceless." The girl in the red dress had a pleading expression on her face because the antidote was on her. If she was really captured, then not only would she not be able to kill the head of the Yun family to avenge her mother, but she would also be tortured in pain. She could imagine what kind of cruel methods her father would use to treat her in order to obtain the Earth Tier battle skill. Chapter 573. Jianchen's huge reaction gave everyone in the room a huge fright, especially Mingdong, Yu, and Dugu Feng, who understood Jianchen very well. They all stared at Jianchen with strange expressions, their faces filled with disbelief. After interacting with Jianchen for so long, this was the first time they had seen Jianchen lose his composure like this. Moreover, it was because of an Earth Tier battle skill that they didn't put in their eyes at all. "Jianchen, is there something wrong with the battle skill Traceless Autumn Waters?" Yu's limpid eyes radiated a bright light as she stared at Jianchen and asked softly. Her soft voice was as pleasant as the chirping of a skylark, extremely pleasing to the ear. Mingdong and Dugu Feng also looked at Jianchen with curiosity. A mere Earth Tier battle skill could actually make Jianchen, who had grasped a Heaven Tier battle skill, lose his composure like this. This made them realize that the battle skill Traceless Autumn Waters was not as simple as they had imagined. It wasn't just them. Even the red dress girl was shocked by Jianchen's huge reaction. She stared blankly at the shocked Jianchen and stood there at a loss for what to do. The Yun family head standing outside the door had a very anxious expression. He glared at the red-dressed girl and shouted, "You crazy girl! You actually dare to lie to people outside! These young masters are extremely intelligent. How could they be fooled by your random lies? Why aren't you coming back with me obediently?" The Yun family head was afraid that Jianqin and the others would really believe that the red-dressed girl had a battle skill and interfere. As soon as he finished speaking, he no longer cared if he would offend Jianqin and the others. He immediately flashed into the room and rushed towards the red-dressed girl, attempting to forcefully drag her out to prevent her from revealing more secrets. This time, Jianqin didn't stop the Yun family head, allowing him to smoothly charge into the room. He originally wanted to grab the red-dressed girl, but at this moment, a cold light flashed through Jianqin's eyes. He shouted in a low voice, "Who let you in? Get the hell out of here!" Jianqin pushed his right hand forward. Boundless energy of the world erupted from his palm, forming an extremely powerful shockwave that fiercely smashed into the Yun family head's body. The Yun family head was only an initial level Great Saint Master, facing Jianqin's personal attack. How could he block it? He didn't even have time to react before his entire body was sent flying by the powerful energy shockwave. In the end, he fiercely smashed into the wall behind him, creating a hole in the sturdy wall. He flew out of the inn through this hole. While he was in midair, he violently spat out a mouthful of blood. Jianqin's control of energy was extremely ingenious. This attack only sent the Yun family head flying and didn't cause any damage to the rest of the inn. However, the power of his palm greatly frightened the Yun family head's guards and the red-dressed girl. They were completely stunned as they stared blankly at Jianqin with pale faces. They were completely horrified. The Yun family head was an initial level Great Saint Master. Even if this kind of strength couldn't be considered at the peak of Phoenix Sun City, it could still be considered first-rate. Such a powerful figure was actually sent flying by a youth who didn't even seem to be in his 20s. This kind of strength made them feel incomparably shocked. Jianqin stared closely at the red-dressed girl and urgently asked, "Do you really have the traceless, clear water battle skill?" Although the red-dressed girl didn't know why Jianqin was so interested in the battle skill, she was also scared silly by Jianqin's incomparable strength. She stared blankly at Jianqin and unconsciously nodded her head. Jianqin looked at Mingdong and said, "Mingdong, immediately go find me a piece of paper and a pen." "Okay." Mingdong didn't hesitate. He turned around and walked out. Soon he obtained a piece of paper and a pen from the inn's manager and handed them to Jianqin. Jianqin threw the paper and pen onto the table and said to the red-dressed girl in a commanding tone, "Write down everything you know about the traceless, clear water battle skill for me." Hearing Jianqin's irresistible words, the red-dressed girl hesitated slightly. In the end, she still didn't immediately agree. She said, "If I write it down, can you agree to my request and help me destroy the Yun family and kill the Yun family head to avenge my mother?" "I agree." This time, Jianqin agreed without any hesitation. The red-dressed girl could not help but let out a sigh of relief when she received Jianqin's confirmation. Although she would be going against her mother's warning about teaching the battle skill to outsiders, she had no other choice now that the situation had developed like this. The red-dressed girl quickly began to write on the paper. Before long, she had completely written down the battle skill and passed it to Jianqin. Jianqin received the paper and began to read it. When he finished reading the contents, the surprise on his face became greater and greater. In the end, it became deep shock. Jianqin was not unfamiliar with the battle skill because it was passed down through the Bai family. In the past, his uncle Bai Dao and his mother Bai Yuntian had both passed down the battle skill to Jianqin. However, Jianqin was unable to cultivate it because his saint weapon had been destroyed and he had lost his saint force. At the same time, he learned that the battle skill was divided into 3 levels. The first level was a human tier battle skill, the second level was an earth tier battle skill, and the third level was a heaven tier battle skill. However, What the red-dressed girl had written down was actually the complete first and second level of the battle skill. Not a single word was missing. It was exactly the same as what his uncle Bai Dao and mother Bai Yuntian had passed down to him. How could Jianchen not be shocked by this? Jianchen slowly put down the paper in his hand and stared at the red-dressed girl sternly. He asked with a deep voice, "Tell me, where did you obtain this battle skill?" "That's what my mother told me. Is there a problem with that?" The woman stared at Jianchen in doubt. Her face was filled with confusion. "What's your mother's name?" Jianchen continued to ask. Jianchen's question stirred up the memories buried in the depths of the girl's mind. The scenes of her mother's care and concern constantly appeared in her mind, causing her to tear up uncontrollably. She sobbed, "My mother's name is Bai Yunhai." As if he had been struck by lightning, Jianchen trembled violently. The earth tier battle skill in his hand fell to the ground as well. He stared at the girl in disbelief and murmured somewhat absent-mindedly, "Bai Yunhai, Bai Yunhai. Your mother's surname is actually Bai." "Her surname is actually Bai Mingdong," and the others stared at Jianchen in confusion. They had no idea about the matters of the Bai family, so they had no idea about the relationship between Jianchen and the Bai family. Obviously, they had no idea just how shocked Jianchen was when he learned that the girl's mother's surname was Bai. "Brother, are you all right?" Mingdong asked in concern. As Jianchen's best brother, Jianchen's emotions would affect him. Jianchen suppressed his churning emotions and forced himself to calm down. He shook his head gently and said, "I'm fine." As he spoke, Jianchen stared at the girl in red with interest. At that moment, the way he looked at her had completely changed. "What's your name?" Jianchen asked gently. His voice had suddenly become extremely gentle. "I'm Yun Lian." The girl in red replied. Her bright eyes stared at Jianchen in an extremely strange manner. She was filled with confusion and curiosity. She was naturally intelligent, so she obviously sensed the subtle changes in Jianchen. She was completely baffled. "Is your mother dead?" Jianchen asked. Tears uncontrollably flowed from Yun Lian's eyes again when she heard the mention of her mother. She nodded with an extremely pained expression and said nothing. Jianchen sighed inside and said, "Did your mother tell you about the Bai family?" Yun Lian raised her head and stared at Jianchen in confusion. She shook her head with tears in her eyes. She knew nothing about the Bai family. "How did your mother die?" Jianchen asked word by word. His voice became rather heavy as well. Yun Lian's eyes were filled with resentment. She gritted her teeth and said, "My mother was beaten to death by the patriarch of the Yun family." This human-faced beast was a newcomer. In order to obtain the battle skill that my mother had grasped, he forced my mother to hand it over. My mother refused, so he beat her up time and time again. My mother's body was weak, so after suffering the inhumane torture of this beast, she finally couldn't take it anymore and passed away. "Woo!" Yun Lian could no longer hold back her tears when she reached there. "My mother died so miserably. I have to personally take revenge for my mother. I have to kill this beast with my own hands. He's worse than a beast." Although the patriarch of the Yun family was Yun Lian's father, Yun Lian had no feelings for him at all. All she felt was deep hatred. Jianchen clenched his fists tightly. His bones cracked as he used this to express the anger in his heart. "Dugu Feng, immediately bring the patriarch of the Yun family over," Jianchen said with a heavy voice with a sunken face. Dugu Feng glanced at Jianchen deeply before turning around and leaving without saying anything. Very soon, he brought over the heavily injured patriarch of the Yun family and threw him onto the cold floor without any politeness. The patriarch of the Yun family was currently extremely heavily injured after receiving Jianchen's attack. He did not even have the strength to stand up. Even an Earth Saint Master would find it difficult to endure an attack from a Heaven Saint Master, let alone a Great Saint Master. "You're worse than a beast. I'm going to bury you with my mother." Yun Lian immediately charged over and viciously kicked the patriarch of the Yun family in the head. She had hidden the grudge of her mother's death for a very long time. Now that she had found an opportunity to take revenge, the grudge that had been buried deep within her heart finally erupted. No one in the room stopped her. They all chose to watch coldly from the side. The patriarch of the Yun family had actually treated his own wife in such a manner for the sake of obtaining an Earth-tier battle skill. Such a despicable act had infuriated everyone. Chapter 574. Yun Lian crouched on the ground and cried for a long time. Only when she grew tired did she gradually stop. However, her face was still filled with grief. Jianchen glanced at Yun Lian with mixed feelings. He gently sighed and sighed before turning to De Gufeng. Take the patriarch of the Yun family away. Keep an eye on him. Don't let him get away. De Gufeng also sensed that Yun Lian and Jianchen seemed to have a special relationship. Since the patriarch of the Yun family was related to Yun Lian's revenge, he dared not be careless. He nodded sternly. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on him. With that, De Gufeng walked out of the room with the mud-like patriarch of the Yun family. Jianchen looked at Yun Lian. After a moment of hesitation, he said, Come with me to the kingdom of Jessen. Yun Lian was slightly surprised when she heard that Jianchen wanted to take her to the kingdom of Jessen. She suppressed her grief and raised her head to look at Jianchen in confusion. She asked, Why do I have to go with you to the kingdom of Jessen? I'm going to confirm something. Perhaps your family will still be there. Jianchen said softly. He was filled with mixed feelings. Who would have thought that the woman in red he had seen a few days ago could be a member of the Bai family? My family? Yun Lian murmured. Then she shook her head in pain. No, I have no family. My only family is my mother. Unfortunately, she passed away many years ago. As for my father, he's worse than an animal. He's not fit to be my father. I have to kill him personally to avenge my mother. Yun Lian was filled with pain. Jianchen slowly walked up to Yun Lian and said again, Come with me to the kingdom of Jessen. There's something I need to confirm. It's related to your mother. Related to my mother? What is it? Yun Lian's eyes lit up. She was clearly very concerned about this matter. I can't tell you right now. You'll understand when we arrive at the kingdom of Jessen, Jianchen said sternly. Yun Lian hesitated. Since this matter was related to her deceased mother, she could not remain indifferent. After a moment of hesitation, Yun Lian finally nodded in agreement to Jianchen's suggestion. She said gently, All right, I'll go with you to the kingdom of Jessen. If that's the case, let's go right now. Jianchen said rather eagerly. Afterward, he looked at Mingdong and the others and said, I need to return to the kingdom of Jessen immediately. You can stay here for now. Once I return, crush this piece of jade if you come across any problems that you can't resolve. With that, Jianchen passed a piece of the mother-son twin stone to Mingdong. This was a special piece of jade that was most widely used on the Tianyuan continent. Once one of them shattered, the other would shatter at the same time, no matter how far away it was. It would serve as some sort of signal to the other party. Mingdong and the others also knew that there was more to this matter than met the eye. It was already beyond their imagination, so they didn't say anything. Mingdong accepted the piece of jade from Jianchen and said sternly, Brother, come back soon. Jianchen nodded. After bidding farewell to everyone, he arrived beside Yun Lian and said, Is there anything else you need to do? If there's nothing else, let's set off right now. I'm fine. It's just that we're very far away from the kingdom of Jessen. Don't you need to make some preparations? Yun Lian asked. There's no need. We'll get there very soon, Jianchen said. Afterward, he arrived beside Yun Lian and grabbed her arm. With a thought, surging wind elemental energy immediately gathered, enveloping the two of them. Before Yun Lian could react, the surging wind elemental energy carried Jianchen and Yun Lian out of the window. They shot into the sky as a faint, azure streak of light. They moved so quickly that no one on the street could see them clearly. The sudden increase in altitude caused Yun Lien, who had experienced flying for the first time, to let out a cry of surprise. Her face turned pale with fright. When she regained her senses, she could only hear the whistling of the wind in her ears, causing her waist-long hair to flutter violently. Under her feet, the huge Phoenix City was rapidly shrinking. In just a few breaths, it had become the size of a sandbox. It was easy to see the entire city's appearance. The people on the streets had already become much smaller than ants, making it very difficult to see them clearly. Yun Lien stared blankly at the city that had shrunk countless times below her. Her eyes were filled with shock. At that moment, she could not be any more shocked. She was extremely shocked. The city of Fengyang rapidly flew away. It did not take long for it to completely disappear from the horizon. The scenery on the ground gradually faded as well. In the end, it was covered by white clouds. Jianqin had already flown above the clouds with Yun Lien. As far as the eye could see, the surroundings were filled with a sea of white clouds. It was boundless and could not be seen at all. Only after long while did Yun Lien return to her senses. Her beautiful eyes were wide open as she stared at Jianqin's handsome face in disbelief. She covered her mouth with her other hand and cried out, "Why? Why? You're actually a peak heaven saint master!" At that moment, Yun Lien's heart was in turmoil. Heaven saint masters were peak experts on the Tianyuan continent. They stood at the apex of the pyramid. Even in a kingdom, an expert like that would have a lofty status. They would enjoy supreme glory. Even the ruler of a kingdom would have to be polite to them. They would not dare to slight them at all. This was because their existence represented the peak of power in a kingdom. The prosperity and decline of a kingdom completely depended on the strength of a heaven saint master. Yun Lien had never imagined that this young man who was only in his 20s would actually be a peak heaven saint master. In the eyes of ordinary people, he was in existence akin to a god. Although the Yun family was a small family, Yun Lien was naturally extremely intelligent as the daughter of the Yun family. She obviously understood what a heaven saint master represented. As long as there was a heaven saint master present, even a small, unknown clan would be able to become one of the most powerful clans in the kingdom. Yun Lien gently covered her mouth with her hand as she blankly stared at Jianqin. She was unable to return to her senses, even after a long while. A heaven saint master was just far too shocking to her. Jianqin could not help but smile when he saw Yun Lien's shocked expression. However, he did not explain anything. He continued on his way as quickly as he could, eager to return to the Changyang prefecture as soon as possible so that he could verify Yun Lien's identity. Under Jianqin's full speed, they returned to the kingdom of Jessen in just 6 hours. He did not stop at all, directly heading to Lore City. Another hour passed just like that. Jianqin finally arrived at Lore City with Yun Lien. The city walls in the distance were clearly visible. They could even see a large number of tents neatly set up outside the city. Banners with the word Qin fluttered in the wind. During this time, Yun Lien had slowly calmed down. Looking at the encampment that stretched for 5 kilometers, she asked curiously, "Is that the army of the Qin Emperor?" "Correct. An army of 500,000 from the Qin Empire is stationed there. They are known as the Eastern Sword Legion and are one of the most elite armies of the Qin Empire," Jianqin explained. "The city up ahead must be the famous Lore City. Looks like the rumors are true. The Qin Empire really does have an extraordinary relationship with the Changyang prefecture. Even their army is stationed outside Lore City," Yun Lien murmured. Her eyes were filled with envy. The Qin Empire was one of the 8 great kingdoms of the Tianyuan continent. The kingdom of Jessen had truly become the ruler of the region with the support of the Qin Empire. No one dared to provoke them. Jianqin flew very quickly, shooting through the sky like an azure meteor. Before Yun Lien could memorize the landscape, he had already flown into Lore City and landed before a huge mansion. It was the Changyang Prefecture. "Come in with me." Jianchen loosened his grip on Yun Lian's shoulder and called out to her before striding toward the entrance of the Changyang Prefecture. Yun Lian subconsciously studied the mansion before her, but when she saw the words Changyang Prefecture written on the plaque above the entrance, she immediately paled in fright. Although she had always lived in Fengyang City, she knew extremely well what had happened in the kingdom of Jessen, especially in Changyang Prefecture. Although Changyang Prefecture had always kept a low profile in the kingdom of Jessen, the strength of Changyang Prefecture had been completely exposed to the world after the invasion of the kingdom of Jessen by the Four Kingdoms. Afterwards, 10 Heaven Saint Masters from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had attacked, but they had been successfully repelled by Changyang Prefecture. They had even killed several experts on the spot. Such glorious battle skills had pushed Changyang Prefecture's prestige to the peak. They had become the publicly acknowledged strongest clan in the kingdom of Jessen, completely replacing the Huayan sect and even suppressing the imperial family. The status of such a huge clan was far greater than that of the tiny Yun family in Fengyang City. In front of such a clan, even the 3 great clans of Fengyang City were as weak as ants. In the eyes of outsiders, Changyang Prefecture had already become a huge power that surpassed the imperial family. Yun Lian had never thought that there would be a day when she would stand outside the gates of Changyang Prefecture. This was a huge clan that she could only look up to. Yun Lian hurriedly grabbed onto Jianchen and said worriedly, "This is Changyang Prefecture. Why did you bring me here? Did you go to the wrong place?" Jianchen smiled and said, "Don't worry, there won't be any problems. Just follow me in." With that, Jianchen brought Yun Lian to the gates nearby. Seeing Jianchen's arrival, the 2 guards at the gates of Changyang Prefecture immediately revealed a look of admiration and respect. They stood even straighter like a pole. When Jianchen passed by them, the 2 guards simultaneously bowed and said loudly, "Greetings, 4th young master!" Chapter 5, 75. Yun Lian's eyes widened as she stared at Jianchen in shock. The name of the 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten, had already been known by everyone in the region. He was the idol of countless youths, the goal they pursued. This was because not only was he a Heaven Saint Master, but he was also the imperial protector of the kingdom of Jessen. Both of his identities were enough to make people look up to him. Being enveloped by the halos of these 2 honors, Jianchen had already become a godlike figure in the eyes of many youths. He stood high above the vast land, mighty and inviolable. Jianchen smiled when he saw the shock on Yun Lian's face and said, "Come in with me." With that, Jianchen brought the shocked Yun Lian into Changyang Prefecture. "So you're the 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten. I should have thought of it a long time ago. Aside from the 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture, who else can become a Heaven Saint Master at such a young age?" Yun Lian murmured. Her gaze toward Jianchen was filled with admiration. After the reconstruction of the Changyang Prefecture, the scenery was even more beautiful. Compared to before, the difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. Even the security within the prefecture had become tighter. Groups of guards could be seen at any time, patrolling the Changyang Prefecture in an imposing manner. Their faces were filled with unconcealable pride. To them, it seemed like being able to serve as guards of the Changyang Prefecture was an unparalleled honor. It was something that would bring honor to their ancestors. The 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture had undoubtedly become the person with the highest status in the Changyang Prefecture. Wherever Jianchen passed by, all the guards who recognized him would bow and greet him. They were extremely respectful. Passing through Changyang Prefecture, Yun Lian curiously observed the scenery of Changyang Prefecture. However, she was not as calm as she seemed on the surface. She was extremely excited. The Changyang Prefecture was an unreachable peak clan in her eyes. She had never thought that there would be a day when she would personally visit the Changyang Prefecture. Jianqin passed through Changyang Prefecture with Yun Lian without any obstructions. They headed straight for the room of his mother, Bai Yuntian. Very soon, Jianqin arrived in front of Bai Yuntian's room. When the two maids outside saw Jianqin arrive, they were immediately shocked. They hurriedly bowed and said, "Greetings to the fourth young master." "Is my mother inside?" Jianqin asked the two maids. Reporting to the fourth young master, "Madam is resting inside." One of the maids said respectfully. As soon as the voice fell, the door was suddenly opened. Bai Yuntian, who was wearing a white robe, appeared in front of Jianqin. When she saw Jianqin, she suddenly became happy. "Xiang, when did you come back? Why didn't you tell me?" Bai Yuntian looked at Jianqin with doting eyes. She loved her son very much. Her son was so outstanding, which made her feel very proud. Yun Lian curiously looked at the graceful and luxurious Bai Yuntian and thought, "Is this Changyang Shoten's mother? Strange. Why does she look a little like my mother?" Looking at his mother's affectionate gaze, Jianqin felt a surge of warmth in his heart. He smiled and said, "Mother, I actually have something important to tell you this time. Let's talk inside." Then Jianqin brought Yun Lian into the room and sat down at an expensive table in the living room. As soon as the three of them sat down, Bai Yuntian couldn't help but ask, "Xiang, who is this little girl?" While speaking, Bai Yuntian picked up the teapot and personally poured tea for the two of them. Her face was full of motherly radiance. Jianqin slightly turned his head and looked at Yun Lian, who was sitting there very awkwardly. He said, "Mother, she is called Yun Lian. She is from the Blue Wind Kingdom. But I think you should know her mother." "Oh, who is it?" "Mother has always stayed in Changyang Prefecture and rarely goes out. I don't know many people." Bai Yuntian chuckled. Jianqin hesitated for a moment. His eyes stared at Bai Yuntian and said, "Mother, do you know someone called Bai Yunhai?" Clang! As soon as Jianqin's voice fell, the teapot in Bai Yuntian's hand fell on the table. All the tea poured out and quickly spread across the table. Bai Yuntian didn't seem to notice that her clothes were slowly soaked by the tea poured on the table. She looked at Jianqin with an extremely excited expression and said in a trembling voice, "What did you say, Xiang? Could it be that you have seen Sister Yunhai? Is she still alive? Where is she now?" Bai Yuntian's trembling voice was full of urgency. Seeing Bai Yuntian's big reaction, Jianqin was completely certain of his guess. Yun Lian's mother was indeed from the Bai family. Moreover, she seemed to have a very good relationship with his mother. Yun Lian heard every word of Bai Yuntian's words clearly. However, she felt very confused because she didn't know when her mother had a relationship with the madam of Changyang Prefecture. Jianqin sighed secretly. He could imagine how sad Bai Yuntian would be when she found out that Yun Lian's mother had passed away. "Mother, Yun Lian is Bai Yunhai's daughter. Moreover, she also knows our Bai family's family heirloom battle technique, Traceless by Water," Jianqin said with a complicated expression. Bai Yuntian's gaze immediately fell on Yun Lian. She carefully sized up Yun Lian before slowly approaching Yun Lian. She affectionately grabbed Yun Lian's hands and said excitedly, "So you're Sister Yunhai's daughter. You really do look a bit like Sister Yunhai back then. Lian, quickly tell Auntie, where is your mother now? Has she been well all these years?" When the word aunt entered Yun Lian's ears, her mind instantly went blank. The mother of the fourth madam of Changyang Prefecture, the imperial protector of the kingdom of Jessen, Changyang Shoten, was actually her aunt. This sudden change stunned Yun Lian on the spot. She couldn't react for a long time. Bai Yuntian looked at Yun Lian with a gentle gaze. There was a hint of doting in her eyes, as if Yun Lian was her own daughter. "Lian, tell aunt, where is your mother now? Has she been well all these years?" Bai Yuntian said in a sobbing voice. She was so emotional that she couldn't control her tears anymore. When she heard about her mother, The grief that she had suppressed with great difficulty surfaced in her heart again. Yun Lian's eyes also flowed with sorrowful tears. She sobbed and said, "My mother is already dead." The expression on Bai Yuntian's face suddenly froze. He looked at Yun Lian in disbelief and said involuntarily, "What?" "Sister Yunhai, she. Bai Yuntian staggered and fell to the ground. "Mother, be careful!" Jianqin cried out in alarm. His figure flashed, and he arrived beside Bai Yuntian. He carefully helped Bai Yuntian to a chair and slowly sat down. He looked at his mother's sorrowful face with concern and comforted her. "Mother, don't be too sad. After all, it's been so long." Tears of grief flowed endlessly from her eyes like a fountain. Bai Yuntian's expression changed from surprise to grief in an instant. She sobbed, "Lianer, tell Aunt, how did your mother die?" Afterwards, Yun Lian told Bai Yuntian the whole story. When she heard that Yun Lian's mother, Bai Yunhai, had been beaten to death by a small Yun family patriarch for the sake of obtaining the Bai family's heirloom battle record, her expression became even more sorrowful. In the end, she couldn't help but sob bitterly. "Sister Yunhai, you died so miserably. It's all Sister's fault for being useless. If Sister had known earlier that you were still alive, then you wouldn't have had to suffer like this. Sister has let you down." Bai Yuntian cried out in pain. Her back was extremely painful. "Aunt, could it be that you know my mother?" Yun Lian also asked the question in her heart while crying. Bai Yuntian said, "Lian, in the past, your mother was my best sister. We were all direct descendants of the Bai family. Your grandfather and my father were brothers of the same father and mother. However, ever since our Bai family suffered a great calamity, many people died, including your grandfather and my father. They were all killed by a group of mysterious people. Only my brother and I were lucky enough to escape. We originally thought that only me and my brother were left in the Bai family. Who would have thought that Sister Yunhai had also successfully escaped? It's a pity that I found out too late. Otherwise, Sister Yunhai wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state." Once she thought of how Yun Lian's mother, Bai Yunhai, was beaten to death. Bai Yuntian's heart was filled with incomparable grief. She couldn't imagine how much her sister had suffered and how much inhumane torture she had suffered. Sister Yunhai has suffered too much these past few years. I must personally avenge her and kill that person who is worse than a beast. Bai Yuntian's eyes flashed with hatred as she gnashed her teeth and said, "So you really are my aunt." Yun Lian's eyes were filled with tears as she stared blankly at Bai Yuntian. Bai Yuntian nodded and said, "Lian, I am your aunt. This is Changyang Shoten, your brother." Yun Lian's entire body became sluggish. She couldn't accept the sudden change of identity in a short period of time. The fourth madam of Changyang Prefecture was actually her aunt. The imperial protector of the kingdom of Jessen, the fourth young master of Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten, was actually her brother. If this was in the past, Yun Lian wouldn't even dare to think about it. Changyang Shoten, who she used to admire and be curious about, was actually her brother. Chapter 576. Suddenly having a younger sister made Jianqin's feelings become somewhat complicated. He didn't know if he should be happy or worried. However, Jianqin still felt a burst of joy in his heart. It was fortunate that he hadn't directly chased Yun Lian out of the inn. Otherwise, he didn't dare imagine what kind of treatment Yun Lian would have received. Since the patriarch of the Yun family knew that the battle skill was in Yun Lian's head, would he treat his daughter the same way he treated Yun Lian's mother in order to obtain the Earth rank battle skill? After all, to a small family like the Yun family, an Earth rank battle skill was just too important. Perhaps Yun Lian's mother didn't want her daughter to feel too much pressure, so she didn't tell Yun Lian anything about the Bai family. Only after meeting Jianqin did she understand more about her mother's identity. Although Bai Yuntian was very sad about Bai Yunhai's death, she had left her daughter behind. This made Bai Yuntian feel somewhat comforted. She treated Yun Lian as if she was her own son. Although she wasn't the one who gave birth to her, she completely treated Yun Lian as her own daughter. She was full of love and care for her. Afterwards, Bai Yuntian slowly told Yun Lian about the Bai family. Yun Lian finally understood that her mother had never told her about her past. However, she never would have thought that her deceased mother was actually a direct descendant of a large family. The three of them stayed in the room for over 2 hours before the grief in their hearts gradually subsided. Xiang, this is your younger sister. Now that you have the ability, you must protect your younger sister well. Don't let her suffer anymore. She has already endured a lot of pain these past few years, Bai Yuntian said to Jianqin. Jianqin had a serious expression. He nodded solemnly and promised, Mother, don't worry. I will definitely protect Yun Lian well. In the future, I won't let Yun Lian suffer the slightest grievance. Yun Lian's emotions became extremely mixed when she heard Jianqin's words. She felt like everything was a dream, unreal. Only 4 hours had passed since then, yet her identity had changed so drastically. She actually found it rather difficult to accept this, as she was completely unprepared. The imperial protector of the kingdom of Jessen, Changyang Shoten, used to be the person she admired the most in her heart. He was an unreachable existence that she could only look up to. But now he had suddenly become her brother, and even vowed to protect her and not let her suffer any grievances. This huge change in status made Yun Lian feel as if she had fallen into a dream. Bai Yuntian took Yun Lian's hand affectionately and said, Lian, your beastly father treated you and your mother like that. There's no need for you to be surnamed Yin. Since you're a member of the Bai family, why don't you change your surname to Bai from today onwards? You'll be called Bai Lian. From today onwards, you'll be a member of the Changyang Prefecture and have nothing to do with the Yun family. Yun Lian hesitated slightly when she heard this, but finally nodded and said softly, Auntie, I'll listen to you. But will the rest of the people in Changyang Prefecture exclude me? Yun Lian's face revealed a trace of worry as she spoke. Bai Yuntian smiled. All right. From now on, you'll be called Bai Lian. Lian, don't worry. With your brother's protection, no one will dare to bully you from now on. As for the rest of the people in Changyang Prefecture, you don't have to worry about them at all. This is because, in the eyes of outsiders, the most powerful person in Changyang Prefecture is the head of the family and the retired elders. But in the prefecture, your brother is the one with the most authority. No one dares to disobey him, not even the king of the kingdom of Jessen. Bai Yuntian's words immediately shocked Bai Lian. She looked at Jianqin in astonishment. Although she knew that Jianqin held a high position in the kingdom of Jessen, she didn't expect him to have such authority in the family as well. He was above the head of the family and all the elders. Bai Yuntian pulled Bai Lian's hand and stood up. Lian, it's getting late. Let's go eat first. I'll introduce you to Uncle and Changbo. When we have time, I'll take you to the palace to meet your uncle. Your uncle is currently the commander of the guards in the palace. Unless there's something important, he won't come here. Hearing that her uncle was the commander of the guards in the kingdom of Jessen, Bai Lian understood that in just a few hours, her status had undergone a tremendous change. She was no longer the young miss of the Yun family. However, this identity came too suddenly and he didn't have much time. It was very difficult for her to adapt. If only my mother could have reunited with Aunt earlier. That way, my mother wouldn't have passed away, Bai Lian thought to herself. Afterward, Jianqin and his mother brought Bai Lian to the dining hall. At the dining table, Bai Lian met the head of the family and the other aunts in Changyang Prefecture. Bai Yuntian also told everyone about Bai Lian's status. However, she didn't talk about the Bai family in detail. She only said that she was the daughter of her long-lost good sister. Everyone accepted Bai Lian's status happily. No one had any objections. All of this was because she had an outstanding son. Everyone at the dining table ate to their heart's content. Whether it was Changyang Ba, Linglong, or second aunts Yu Fengyan, they all treated Bai Lian very warmly. The only one who was a little unnatural was Bai Yushuang. As for Jianqin, he didn't even bother to greet his third aunts. His third aunts had always been against him since they were young, especially when he had just returned to Changyang Prefecture. His third aunt's words angered Jianqin to the point where he could no longer tolerate them. If not for the fact that she was his aunt, Jianqin wouldn't have let her off so easily. After the meal, Bai Yuntian dragged Bai Lian to her room while Jianqin returned to his palace-like building to rest alone. The night passed quickly. The next morning, Jianqin bid farewell to Changyang Ba and brought Bai Yuntian and Bai Lian along as they flew out of Changyang Prefecture, heading straight for the Blue Wind Kingdom. Bai Yuntian clearly hated the murderer who killed her sister, Bai Yunhai. No matter what, she wanted Jianqin to bring her along to the Blue Wind Kingdom to personally avenge her sister. Jianqin couldn't persuade her, so he could only helplessly bring his mother along to the Blue Wind Kingdom. After a few hours of flight, Jianqin once again returned to the inn in the Blue Wind Kingdom's Phoenix City. It just so happened that Mingdong, Yu Yu, Tai Ta, and Dugafeng were all there. When they saw Jianqin return so quickly, they were all very happy. However, when they noticed Bai Yuntian beside Jianqin, they were all stunned. "Ah, Auntie, why did you come here personally?" Yu Yu stared at the white-clothed, graceful, and luxurious Bai Yuntian. She was very surprised. Bai Yuntian smiled and exchanged a few words with Yu Yu before looking at Jianqin and somewhat impatiently asking, "Xiang, where is the murderer who killed Sister Yunhai?" Jianqin said to Dugafeng, "Go and bring the Yun family's patriarch here." Very soon, the haggard Yun family's patriarch was brought over by Dugafeng. When she saw the murderer who killed her sister, Bai Yuntian could no longer maintain her usual composure. She stepped forward and kicked the Yun family's patriarch. Her expression was incomparably furious. "You're worse than a beast. It's your fortune that Sister Yunhai was willing to follow you. Instead of cherishing her, you actually treated her like this and beat her to death. I want you to pay for her with your life." Bai Yuntian cursed as she beat the patriarch. When she thought about how Sister Yunhai, who was very close to her since childhood, was beaten to death by this person in front of her, her heart was filled with incomparable grief. When Mingdong, Yu Yu, Dugafeng, and Tai Ta saw Bai Yuntian's actions, they were all dumbfounded. The four of them stood there and stared at each other. They didn't understand what was going on at all. Yun Lian, who had lost her mother, was unable to control herself either. She constantly kicked the Yun family's patriarch's head as she cursed. "Stop hitting me, Lianer. I'm your father. Although I've done things that your mother didn't deserve, you can't treat me like this. I'm your father, after all. I was wrong. I apologize to you, okay? Please forgive me. If you don't give me the antidote, I'll be poisoned to death by you." The Yun family's patriarch held his head as he lay on the ground and begged for mercy. He was already heavily injured, and the poison had spread throughout his body. He had even lost the most basic ability to move. The only way to survive was to get his daughter to hand over the antidote. "You're not worthy to be my father. I don't have a father who's worse than a beast like you. From now on, my surname is no longer Yin, but Bai." Bai Lian cried out with tears in her eyes. The two of them beat up the Yun family's patriarch for a while before finally stopping, panting slightly. "Lian, take your aunt to see your mother's grave," said Bai Yuntian. Bai Lian nodded slightly before leaving the inn with the others. They walked out of the city, leaving the patriarch to Dugafeng. Soon, the group arrived at a small forest outside of Fengyang City and saw Bai Yunhai's grave. The grave was very simple. There was only a small mound and a tombstone that was half the height of a person. On the tombstone, the words "Bai Yunhai's grave" are clearly engraved. Chapter 577. Bai Yuntian crouched in front of Bai Yunhai's grave and gently touched the cold, hard gravestone. Large droplets of tears flowed from her eyes. She seemed to be in great pain. In her mind, she couldn't help but recall the events from more than 20 years ago. At that time, she and Bai Yunhai were the best of sisters. They played together happily every day and were practically inseparable. If there was something fun to do, they would play together. If there was something delicious to eat together, they would enjoy it together. They would never enjoy it alone. Sister Yunhai, it's all my fault. It's all because of my incompetence. If I had known earlier that you had escaped, then you wouldn't have ended up like this. My sister Yunhai, you've suffered too much these years, even after your death. Even your tombstone is so simple. It's all because I didn't take good care of you, said Bai Yuntian while sobbing. Her heart was filled with grief. Mother, I'll be able to avenge you very soon. I'll definitely kill that thing that's worse than a beast with my own hands. Mother, rest in peace, Bai Lian sobbed as she knelt before the grave. Jianchen felt his heart ache when he saw how pained the two of them were. He stood there silently. Mingdong, Yu Yu, and Tai Ta all became extremely surprised. They had no idea what had happened at all. Why had Bai Lian's mother suddenly become Bai Yuntian's sister? After a moment of hesitation, Yu finally could not hold back anymore. She asked Jianchen softly, Jianchen, what happened? What's going on? Jianchen gently sighed. Yunlian's mother and my mother were the best of friends when they were young. Yunlian is no longer called Yunlian but Bai Lian. At the same time, she's my sister. Mingdong and Yu Yu's jaws dropped when they heard that. Disbelief filled their faces. What? The young lady of the Yun family is actually your sister? Yu Yu said in shock. This is unbelievable. Mingdong also stared at Bai Lian, who was sobbing in front of the grave in great surprise. His gaze was extremely complicated as well. He never would have thought that the young lady of the Yun family, who had clashed with them a few days ago, would actually be Jianchen's sister. Jianchen looked at the crying Bai Yuntian with a heavy heart. After hesitating for a moment, he came to Bai Yuntian's side and gently squatted down. He comforted her. Mother, don't be too sad. The dead can't be brought back to life. Moreover, Auntie, Yunhai has been dead for more than 10 years. Bai Yuntian wiped away her tears and choked with sobs. Sister Yunhai, you've been alone here for over a decade. You must be very lonely. Don't worry. Now that I've found you, I'll take you away no matter what. Come back to the Changyang clan with me. I'll accompany you every day in the future, so you won't be lonely anymore. As she spoke, Bai Yuntian climbed to the back of the grave and began to dig at the simple grave with her hands. Large drops of tears fell from her eyes and landed on the grave, slowly wetting the hard, dry soil. After more than 10 years of wind and rain, the soil on the burial mound had become very hard under the scorching sun. Bai Yuntian used her tender fingers to dig a few times before her fingers were scratched by the hard soil and bright red blood flowed out. However, Bai Yuntian didn't seem to feel it at all. She couldn't feel the piercing pain from her injured fingers rubbing against the hard soil. She continued to use her hands to push away the grave, vowing to take her sister away from here. Seeing this, Jianchen's heart ached. He quickly went forward to grab Bai Yuntian's hands and said in a pleading tone, Mother, don't be like this. Quickly stop. Let me do this. You can stand aside and rest. Bai Yuntian shook her head and cried, No, I must save Sister Bai Hai with my own hands. I must accompany Sister Bai Hai and bring her back to Changyang Prefecture. Bai Yuntian dug even harder. Her slender, jade-like fingers were already stained with mud. Bright red blood continuously flowed out from her fingertips, dyeing the mud red. Mother, let me help you. Jianchen couldn't persuade her, so he could only go along with Bai Yuntian's wishes. He then started digging as well. He worked hard at the grave in front of him, trying to relieve Bai Yuntian's pain. Bai Lian crawled over from the grave and joined the two's actions. The three of them used their own hands to dig as hard as they could. Mother, your daughter is incompetent to let you live alone in this desolate place for more than 10 years. However, Mother will soon have a new home. Moreover, Aunt will accompany you by your side. Mother will not be alone in the future. Let me do my part for Auntie." Seeing the actions of the three of them, Yu, who was standing at the side, was moved as well. Tears of sorrow flowed down her cheeks. Then she came to the grave and knelt down, using her white and tender fingers to dig at the soil. Mingdong looked at this scene with a complicated expression. He didn't say anything. He followed Yu and silently knelt in front of the grave. He dug his hands deep into the soil and joined in the digging. In the end, even Taita took the initiative to join in. With everyone working together, they quickly dug open the grave. Then they dug another 2 meters deep before they finally saw a completely black coffin. Mother, Bai Lian's longing and pain completely erupted when she saw the coffin. She cried out in extreme grief. If it weren't for Jianqin stopping her in time, she probably would have jumped down and hugged the wooden coffin. Jianqin's heart became even more pained when he saw the muddy wooden coffin. He sighed inside, and with a thought he controlled the energy of the world to lift the wooden coffin from the ground. He carefully placed it on a flat surface. Bai Yuntian arrived before the wooden coffin and used her bloodied hands to slowly wipe away the soil. She looked so careful, as if she was wiping away a supreme treasure. "Sister Yunhai, it's been over 20 years in the blink of an eye. Do you still remember me?" "I'm your big sister, Yuntian," Bai Yuntian murmured. "Sister Yunhai, come home with me. I'll be by your side every day, so you won't be lonely, okay?" Bai Lian lay on the coffin and sobbed. She didn't care about the slippery soil on the coffin at all. The tears in her eyes seemed like they would never run out. They gushed out fiercely, and her beautiful eyes were red and swollen from crying. "Mother, Bai Lian, let's hurry up and move Auntie's coffin into the city. Auntie has spent over 10 years alone in the wilderness. I'm sure she's tired of this place," Jianqin comforted. This time, neither Bai Yuntian nor Yin Lian objected. They both agreed with Jianqin's suggestion. Afterwards, Jianqin personally carried Bai Yuntian's coffin on his shoulder and left with the others. Jianqin carried a coffin covered in mud as he walked towards Phoenix City. Along the way, he attracted the strange gazes of all the passers-by. They stared at the group of people with strange gazes as they discussed amongst themselves. "Do you think that person is crazy? Do you see that coffin? It's covered in mud. It must have just been dug out from the ground. Is he going to take it into the city? Doesn't he know that coffins are forbidden in all the cities? They definitely don't know about this rule. Just watch. They'll definitely be stopped by the guards." Many mercenaries and merchants pointed at Jianqin's group and laughed mockingly. Jianqin walked at the front with the coffin on his shoulder. He walked straight towards Fengyang City and soon arrived at the city gate. At this moment, a soldier walked over and blocked Jianqin's path. When he saw that Jianqin was carrying the coffin, he was certain that Jianqin was a pauper who couldn't even afford a carriage. Therefore, his attitude was not polite at all. He said arrogantly, "Stop. Our Fengyang City prohibits coffins from entering the city. If you want to enter the city, scram." However, before he could finish speaking, he was stopped by Jianqin's shout. Then Jianqin kicked the soldier's chest without hesitation, sending him flying through the air. "Someone is causing trouble here. Hurry up and capture him." It was as if they had poked a hornet's nest. Even more soldiers ran over with weapons in hand. On the city walls, there was even a row of soldiers with crossbows aimed at Jianqin. Jianqin was already in a bad mood today. Now that he was being harassed by these soldiers, the killing intent in his heart was aroused. Looking at the surrounding soldiers, his eyes instantly became cold. A strong killing intent spread out from his body, causing the surrounding temperature to plummet. The surrounding people even felt as if they had fallen into an ice cavern, chilling them from head to toe. Now, only our city lord is an Earth Saint Master. However, the strength of those young people really is abnormal. They are clearly younger than me, but they are much stronger than me. One of them is even a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. He is only a step away from becoming a Heaven Saint Master. It's unbelievable. I just don't know which peak clan they are from. The guard's eyes were filled with envy. At this moment, a strong killing intent came from outside, immediately bringing the general, who was immersed in his memories, back to reality. Sensing the intensity of the murderous aura, the general of the city guards turned pale with fright. He immediately stood up from his chair and exclaimed, "What a strong, murderous aura! Who is it?" Before he could finish speaking, the general of the city guards ran out in a panic. Chapter 578. Author's note. Just now, I saw some readers in the book review section saying that the article was not connected. Xiaoyao went to check and found that the order of the chapters was correct, but the content was updated incorrectly. Now it has been fixed. Sorry. Without the commander's order, the soldiers who were charging towards Jianqin had already stopped. Their eyes were filled with fear as they stared fearfully at Jianqin, who was carrying a coffin. The intense killing intent emanating from Jianqin's body terrified the soldiers. They no longer had the arrogance they had before. The commander was afraid that these soldiers would anger Jianqin and cause Jianqin to start another massacre at the gates of Fengyang City. Thus, he did not dare to hesitate and immediately jumped down from the city wall. He jogged all the way to Jianqin. When he saw Jianqin's gloomy expression, his heart became very uneasy and his entire body trembled slightly. The young man in front of him was a powerful figure who did not even fear the Harito family. With Fengyang City's current strength, he was someone they could not afford to offend. "Young master, please calm down. Please calm down. It's all because of my lack of discipline that my subordinates offended young master. However, I will definitely severely punish those bastards who offended young master. I hope that young master won't hold a grudge against them and won't lower yourself to their level." The general who was guarding the city hurriedly apologized to Jianqin. He had a charming smile on his face and a respectful attitude. He was afraid that he would accidentally offend this powerful figure and bring disaster to Fengyang City. The commander carefully observed Jianqin's expression, then immediately turned his head to look at the surrounding soldiers. Facing these soldiers, he would not be as respectful as facing Jianqin. His face suddenly darkened, and the aura of a superior exploded. He shouted sternly, "You bunch of blind bastards! How dare you be so rude to young master? Are you tired of living? Who offended young master just now? Stand out and apologize to young master immediately." The group of soldiers hesitated for a moment. In the end, a pale-faced soldier staggered out from behind. There was a clear footprint on his chest. It was the soldier who had been kicked out by Jianqin. The commander immediately walked over and kicked the soldiers, but, he scolded, "Hurry up and kneel down and apologize to young master." The commander's kick was extremely powerful, causing the soldier to fall to the ground. His entire body was at Jianqin's feet. However, there was no anger on the soldier's face. There was only deep fear. Now that things had developed to this point, he understood that he had offended someone he should not have. "Young master, it's all my fault. It's all my fault. I was blind and delayed your precious matters. Please be magnanimous and forgive me," the soldier said as he knelt beside Jianqin. He was so regretful that his intestines turned green. Jianqin's face darkened as he stared coldly at the soldier. Today's events had already made his mood very heavy and his temper very bad. Earlier, when he was stopped by this soldier while carrying Aunt by Yunhai's coffin into the city, Jianqin really wanted to kill him. If it were not for the commander's timely apology, there would have been rivers of blood flowing in front of the city gates. At this moment, Yu Yu sat up from behind and gently pulled on Jianqin's left arm. She said gently, "Jianqin, forget it. Don't bother about these small matters." Yu Yu's words caused the killing intent emitted from Jianqin's body to slowly recede. He stared coldly at the soldier kneeling in front of him and shouted, "Scram!" Seeing that things had finally calmed down, The commander let out a huge sigh of relief. Then he grabbed the soldier's clothes and threw him to the side. He said angrily, "Why aren't you scramming? Don't block the young master's path." Afterwards, he immediately put on a smile and invited Jianchen in with great enthusiasm. "Young master, please enter the city. I won't take up any more of your precious time. Have a safe trip, young master." Although Fengyang City had a rule that prohibited bringing coffins and other unlucky items into the city, the commander did not dare to mention this in front of Jianchen. He enthusiastically invited Jianchen in with great respect, as if he was afraid of offending him in some way. Jianchen did not say anything. He carried Aunt Bai Yunhai's coffin into the city expressionlessly with a pained expression. Behind him, Bai Yuntian, Yu Yu, Mingdong, Tai Ta, and Bai Lian all followed behind with pained expressions. As the few of them entered the city, the congested city gate finally cleared up. Although there were many people blocking the entrance, the entire place was silent. Everyone looked at Jianchen and the others with complicated and curious gazes. Their hearts were still in shock and could not calm down for a long time. In the eyes of these mercenaries and merchants, the guards of every city were not to be offended. Although these guards were not as strong as some mercenaries, they represented the official forces of the Blue Wind Kingdom. If there was a conflict with them, and if they did not have a strong background, they could only wait to be hunted down by the Blue Wind Kingdom. As for the young man who carried the coffin, not only did he injure the guards, even the commander of the guards had to personally apologize to him. This scene caused everyone to speculate in their hearts. They did not know just who the young man who carried the coffin was to actually cause the commander of the guards to be so afraid of him. Jianchen carried the muddy coffin as he swaggered through the streets, attracting everyone's attention. Wherever Jianchen passed by, the people around him would all stop and look back curiously. Their faces were filled with astonishment. Carrying a coffin into the city was an extremely rare thing in Fengyang City. This was because Fengyang City forbade such things from entering and could only leave them outside the city. However, a few people immediately recognized that Jianchen and the others were the young experts who had killed the 5 Earth Saint Masters outside the Heavenly Phoenix auction house. They were immediately shocked and looked at Jianchen's group with deep fear. Jianchen carried the coffin back to the inn very quickly. As soon as he entered the inn, the waiter was shocked to see the coffin on Jianchen's shoulder. With a sad face, he said, "Dear guest, why did you bring a coffin in? Our inn forbids such things. Otherwise, you will scare away our guests." Noticing the situation, even the shopkeeper personally hurried over. With a troubled expression, he said, "Dear guest, it's best if you put the coffin somewhere else. Our inn cannot store such things. Otherwise, how are other guests supposed to stay in the inn?" Ming Dong walked up from behind and tossed a handful of purple coins to the innkeeper. He coldly said, "We've booked this inn. If you want to stay here, stay. If you don't want to stay, tell them to scram. Cut the crap and get out of the way." Ming Dong's large handful of purple coins seemed to be around 100. It was enough to cover the income of the inn for several months. Seeing how Ming Dong had taken out such a large sum of money, the shopkeeper's frown immediately turned into a smile. He accepted the purple coins in a hurry and said, Of course. It's just a small matter. Isn't it just a coffin? It's no big deal. Dear guests, please come in." After the group disappeared down the stairs, the shopkeeper stood at the bottom of the stairs, holding a large pile of purple coins with both hands as he secretly laughed. He murmured, "These young masters sure are generous. Over 100 purple coins is equivalent to several months of Mayan's income. We've made a huge profit. We've really made a huge profit this time." At this moment, a mercenary who was eating nearby said to the shopkeeper, "Shopkeeper, you really are fearless because you don't know anything. How dare you accept their money? Do you know who they are?" "Of course I know. They must be the young masters of some large clan. Otherwise, how could they have so much money?" The shopkeeper subconsciously replied, "Let me tell you, Those youngsters are the ones who personally killed the leaders of the 3 great clans outside the Heavenly Phoenix auction house. Even the 2 Earth Saint Masters from the Harito clan were killed by them," said the young man. The mercenary said. Hearing this, the shopkeeper turned pale with fright. "What? They were the ones who killed the leaders of the 3 large clans of Fengyang City?" The mercenary nodded with certainty and said, "That's right. And the young man who gave you the money is a peak Earth Saint Master. He's only a step away from becoming a Heaven Saint Master." The shopkeeper's legs went soft, and he was so scared that he fell to the ground. He muttered with a pale face, "Oh my God, I actually dared to take their money and let them put the things outside. I am tired of living." Genshin's group stayed in the inn for a day. A day later, a group of people all riding Class 4 magical beasts arrived at Fengyang City. There were around 50 people in total, and they all wore the same black robes. When the soldiers guarding the city saw that all of them were riding Class 4 magical beasts, they didn't dare to stop them at all. They didn't even interrogate them before opening the city gates, allowing them to enter the city without a hitch. This group of 50 people ran through the streets of Fengyang City with lightning speed. Finally, they stopped in front of an inn. The person at the front immediately dismounted and walked into the inn with a majestic gait. He directly went to the place where Genshin was resting to meet with Genshin. "Greetings to Sir Imperial Protector." The person bowed in front of Genshin and respectfully said. Genshin looked at the young man in black robes and smiled faintly. "Qin Wujian, you've come quite quickly. Sir Imperial Protector has given the order." This subordinate didn't dare to hesitate and immediately rushed over with a small group of elites. The person in black robes replied. He was Qin Wujian, who had rushed over from the kingdom of Jessen. Chapter 579. Not long after, a large carriage stopped outside the inn. From the color and luster of the carriage, it was not difficult to tell that it was a brand new carriage. The decoration was very beautiful, and it was filled with fresh flowers, as if it was a very luxurious flower carriage. After that, Genshin personally carried Aunt Bai Yunhai's coffin out of the inn, accompanied by Bai Yuntian and the others. Then, he gently placed the coffin on the carriage. The 2 Class 1 magical beasts that were originally used to pull the carriage had been replaced by 9 Class 4 magical beasts. The ostentation could be said to be very grand. At least in Fengyang City, the scene of a Class 4 magical beast pulling a carriage had never happened before. After everything was set up, everyone did not stay in Fengyang City for a moment longer. They slowly drove the carriage out of the city. Everyone chose to walk on foot. The 50 Eastern Deity Sword Legion's elite team that rode over on rank for magical beasts all held onto their mounts. They were like loyal and devoted guards as they guarded the carriage on both sides. They slowly walked on foot, causing passers-by to stop and watch one after another and talk about it. Such a grand spectacle was unprecedented in the history of Fengyang City, and it greatly surprised the mercenaries and caravans in front of them. Then they hurriedly drove the carriage to an empty space on both sides of the street. They knew in their hearts that the person who was able to use 9 Class 4 magical beasts to pull the carriage must have a very high status, and was not someone they could afford to offend. The funeral procession directly left Fengyang City. Because the procession was dragging a carriage, they could not travel too quickly, and were completely walking towards the kingdom of Jessen. The Yun family's patriarch, Genshin, did not let them go either. He handed them over to an elite soldier to escort them, and they left together with the funeral procession. With such a slow speed, Genshin and the others walked for a full 7 days before they finally returned to Lore City in the kingdom of Jessen. For Genshin, Mingdong, and the 50 elites walking for 7 days was naturally nothing. However, the 2 weak women, Bai Yuntian and Yunlian, couldn't bear it. Halfway through the journey, they rode on Class 4 magical beast mounts. The 2 of them looked haggard and exhausted. After returning to Changyang Prefecture, Bai Yuntian couldn't care less about his exhausted body. He immediately found the deputy housekeeper of Changyang Prefecture and asked the deputy housekeeper to arrange a grand funeral for Bai Yunhai. However, after hearing this, the assistant steward did not immediately take action. Instead, he hesitated and said, "Fourth Madam, Changyang Prefecture has just been established, and now we are holding a funeral. Furthermore, it is for an outsider. I'm afraid this is somewhat inappropriate. The elders in the family will most likely not agree." Bai Yuntian's face darkened. She shouted, "What outsider? That's my sister. Deputy Housekeeper Sue, go arrange it immediately." The deputy housekeeper was in a difficult position. Changyang Prefecture was not some second or third-rate small family. It was a prestigious family in the kingdom of Jessen. The deputy housekeeper would indeed feel that it was inappropriate to arrange a grand funeral for an outsider. "Didn't you hear what my mother said? What's wrong with arranging a funeral for my aunt in the manor? Hurry up and do it." Jianshan walked in from outside and glared at the deputy housekeeper. Seeing that Jianshan was angry, the deputy housekeeper's heart trembled. He panicked and said, "It's the fourth young master. Fourth young master, please calm down. Your servant will arrange the funeral right away." Since Jianshan had spoken, the deputy housekeeper did not dare to say anything against him. This was because he knew that in Changyang Prefecture, Jianshan's status was supreme. The honor and status of Changyang Prefecture were all brought by him alone. Once Jianshan had spoken, none of the elders in Changyang Prefecture dared to object. Although they were dissatisfied, they did not dare to say anything. Under the full efforts of Deputy Housekeeper Sue, all the guards and servants in Changyang Prefecture began to move. They went to the market as fast as they could to buy the necessities for the funeral and began to arrange them in the manor. Later, even the chief housekeeper, Chang Bo, personally participated and gave advice. With the combined efforts of hundreds of people in Changyang Prefecture, it took only half a day to complete the arrangements. Then Bai Yuntian's coffin was placed at the front, surrounded by flowers. It was a sea of flowers. Above the coffin hung a portrait drawn by Bai Lian. It was the mother she had seen when she was young. That was a very beautiful lady, and the portrait was very lifelike. Upon closer inspection, there were some similarities with Jianshan's mother, Bai Yuntian. The only flaw was that the woman in the portrait had a hideous scar on her face. Once all the preparations were complete, the grand funeral was officially held in Changyang Prefecture. However, the fact that Changyang Prefecture suddenly held a funeral for no reason surprised and confused everyone in Lore City. At the same time, it caused a great uproar in the city. Very soon, the city lord and the important figures of the three other clans all paid a visit to see what was going on. At the same time, a few other clans and organizations in Lore City all paid a visit. At the same time, they volunteered to participate in the funeral, lending their meager strength. On the second day of the funeral, the king of the kingdom of Jessen and the commander of the Imperial Guards, Bai Dao, arrived in Lore City with 500 black-armored soldiers. Even the principal of Kargath Academy, Kafir, was alarmed, hurrying over from the academy. Changyang Prefecture status in the kingdom of Jessen was extremely special. The future of the kingdom of Jessen completely depended on Changyang Prefecture, so the sudden grand funeral in Changyang Prefecture had given them quite a fright. They all worried that someone important had passed away, which was why the king of the kingdom of Jessen and Kafir had hurried over in such a hurry. However, when they learned that the person who had passed away was Bai Yuntian's sister who had been separated from her for over 20 years, they all secretly sighed in relief. Only Bai Dao's heart was extremely heavy. The news of Changyang Prefecture's grand funeral spread like wildfire. Many clans and organizations in the kingdom of Jessen caught wind of it, and all the important figures personally came over to express their sincerest consolation. Even the two great elders of the Huayun sect personally came over. On one hand, They came to console the people of Changyang Prefecture. But on the other hand, they also came to express their apologies for the matter with Jianqin a few years ago. On the other hand, they also offered great gifts. In short, the funeral for Bai Yunhai in Changyang Prefecture was extremely grand. Not only did all the influential organizations in the kingdom of Jessen come, even the king of the kingdom of Jessen personally came. The funeral lasted for 7 whole days. Bai Yunhai's grave was not set in the wilderness. Instead, under Bai Yuntian's insistence, it was set in the backyard of Changyang Prefecture. A piece of land with good feng shui was specially set aside for Bai Yunhai's burial, and an extremely luxurious tomb was constructed. After the funeral, the various organizations that had come to offer their condolences all returned. Only Bai Dao remained behind. He stood tall like a tree, silently standing before Bai Yunhai's tombstone for 3 whole days. He did not move at all. His face was filled with pain. Bai Dao and Bai Yuntian were siblings from the same father and mother. Their father and Bai Yunhai's father were brothers from the same father. Not only did the two of them share the purest blood relationship with Bai Yunhai, they were also his closest childhood playmates. Sister Yunhai, I never thought that you'd make it out alive, and that you'd been living in a neighboring country all this time. Why couldn't I have received news of you earlier? If I had, the 3 of us would have been reunited, and we wouldn't be separated like this. Bai Dao stared at the tombstone in front of him in sorrow as he softly murmured. Bai Yuntian pulled Bai Lian over. Brother, this is Sister Yunhai's daughter. She's called Bai Lian. Lian, this is your uncle. Bai Lian looked at the black-armored Bai Dao and obediently called out, Uncle. Bai Dao finally shifted his gaze away from the tombstone. He stared at the 18-year-old Bai Lian with mixed feelings. A while later, he let out a long sigh. Sister Yunhai may have left us, but she left her daughter behind. Bai Lian, don't worry. Uncle will protect you well in the future. Tears flowed from Bai Lian's eyes. At that moment, she felt like she already had a warm family. There were seniors who cared for her everywhere. It was completely different from the days she spent in the Yun family. Bai Dao's gaze landed on Bai Hai's tombstone again. He heavily said, Where's the murderer of Sister Bai Hai? He's locked up in the woodshed. I don't want him to die so easily, so I haven't executed him yet. The person who spoke was Jianqin. The poison in the patriarch of the Yun family had already been removed by the antidote he had obtained from Bai Lian, so he had not died from the poison. Bai Dao turned around and made his way to the woodshed. Jianqin hesitated slightly as he watched Bai Dao leave. He said, Uncle, don't let him die so easily. I know, Bai Dao replied without even looking back. He disappeared from Jianqin's sight very quickly. Soon after, a series of chilling cries rang out from Changyang Prefecture. The cries were filled with pain. It was possible to imagine what kind of torture the owner of the cries was enduring. In the private room, half a month had already passed. The matter of the Changyang clan's funeral had already calmed down, and everyone had forgotten about it. Bai Yuntian and Yun Lian's grief had been reduced by a lot as well. But even with that being the case, it was still very difficult to see a smile on their faces. Bai Dao had also remained in Changyang Prefecture for half a month. He hated the person who had killed his sister to the core, so he used the cruelest methods to make the patriarch of the Yun family suffer hellish torture every day. He used all the torture he knew on the patriarch several times before finally torturing him to death. Afterward, he tossed his corpse into the wild to feed wild beasts. It could be described as the most painful torture in the world. With the death of the patriarch of the Yun family, Bai Yunhai's vengeance was basically resolved. Bai Dao did not stay in Changyang Prefecture for long either. He left Changyang Prefecture the next day and headed for the imperial palace. Jianqin gathered everyone together after Bai Dao's departure. He bid farewell to his parents and the people of Changyang Prefecture. He planned on leaving Changyang Prefecture to continue developing the flame mercenaries. Brother, Let me go with you. Bai Lian suddenly arrived before Jianqin and looked at Jianqin hopefully. Chapter 580. Jianqin looked at Bai Lian in surprise and said, Bai Lian will probably encounter many dangerous and intense scenes of slaughter along the way. It'll be very difficult for a girl like you to adapt. After spending the past few days together, Jianqin had already accepted her identity as his sister. Lian, the Tianyuan continent is extremely dangerous. It's not safe there, so it's not suitable for a girl like you to wander around. It's best if you stay in Chanyang Prefecture. No one will dare to bully you there, Bai Yuntian advised. Bai Lian shook her head and begged, Auntie, I don't like staying in Chanyang Prefecture all the time. I've rarely ventured out in the past few years, so I've always wanted to experience life on the continent. Brother, take me with you. Jianqin hesitated for a while before agreeing to Bai Lian's suggestion in the end. He nodded. All right, come with us. You can experience the environment of the Tianyuan continent. It might be of some help to you. You haven't even condensed a saint weapon yet, so I'll be able to give you some pointers when I'm with you. It'll be much better than staying in Chanyang Prefecture. Bai Yuntian knew that she could no longer keep her niece after hearing what Jianqin had said. All she could do was remind Jianqin, Xiang'er, you have to take good care of your sister in the future. She's just too weak right now, so you can't let anything happen to her. Mother, don't worry. I'll definitely protect Bai Lian, Jianqin said firmly. He had suddenly gained a younger sister, which made Jianqin experience what it was like to be a big brother. At the same time, he felt like he had gained another responsibility, which was to protect his younger sister. Jianqin and Bai Lian bid farewell to everyone in Chanyang Prefecture before setting off on their journey to the Blue Wind Kingdom again. 2 days later, Jianqin and the others had already entered the territory of the Blue Wind Kingdom. After half a day's long journey, they finally entered a first-class city called Cloud City. If Jianqin's group were to walk around Wake City on their Class 3 magical beast mounts, they would have attracted a lot of attention. But now that they were in Cloud City, they were incomparably ordinary. A first-class city was much more prosperous and powerful than a second-class city. As a first-class city, although the streets of Cloud City were not filled with people riding Class 3 magical beast mounts, it was still very easy to see them. One could even occasionally see a Class 4 magical beast mount. Moreover, the strength of the mercenaries walking on the streets was generally around the Saint Master level, and great Saint Masters could be found everywhere. Their overall strength was much stronger than that of Phoenix Sun City, and the two could not be compared at all. Jianqin's group found an inn to stay in while Jianqin and Dugafeng went out to scout for information. As for Tai Ta, he was called out by Jianqin in hopes that Tai Ta would quickly learn the rules of survival in the outside world. After Mingdong's group left, only Jianqin, Yu Yu, and Bai Lian remained in the inn. At this moment, the three of them were sitting on the first floor of the inn, slowly eating after ordering some delicacies. They tasted all sorts of delicacies while listening to the conversations of the other mercenaries in the inn, hoping to hear some useful information from them. However, after listening for half a day, Jianqin didn't gain anything at all. These mercenaries were talking about where they were going to get rich today, where they were going to get rich tomorrow, where they were going to get rich tomorrow, where they were going to get rich tomorrow, or where they killed a few powerful magical beasts and how many monster cores they obtained, and so on. There were even some mercenaries who talked about the prostitutes in the brothels without any fear. Mingdong's group of 3 quickly returned and sat down in a circle. Mingdong said to Jianqin in a low voice, "Brother, I've already found out. However, the powers in Cloud City are a bit more complicated. It's not as clear as Phoenix Sun City." With that, Mingdong paused and poured himself a cup of wine. After downing it all in one gulp, he continued, "On the surface, there are 6 powers in Cloud City. They're split into 4 clans and 2 sections. These 6 powers are the strongest in Cloud City on the surface, and they're extremely close. The 6 powers have formed a marriage alliance, and after over 100 years of development, I think the 6 of them have almost become one family. Their bloodlines are extremely chaotic. Other than the 6 great organizations, there are quite a few clans and mercenary groups in the city that aren't any weaker than the 6 great organizations. They all have Earth Saint Masters, but they're not as famous as the 6 great organizations. I've also observed that there are a few smaller clans that also have Earth Saint Masters, said Jian Wushuang. Other than the clans, what are the strongest mercenary groups in Cloud City? Jianchen asked. There are a total of 4 that are on the surface. They're the Bloodthorn Mercenary Group, the Blood Rose Mercenary Group, the Beast Mercenary Group, and the Carnage Mercenary Group. Among them, the relationship between the Bloodthorn Mercenary Group and the Blood Rose Mercenary Group is very interesting. It's said that the captain of the Blood Rose Mercenary Group is an extremely beautiful and ruthless woman. The captain of the Bloodthorn Mercenary Group is deeply in love with the captain of the Blood Rose Mercenary Group and has been pursuing her for 10 years. Although the 2 of them haven't become lovers yet, their relationship is extremely complicated. I don't know the specifics, but we can consider the Bloodthorn Mercenary Group and the Blood Rose Mercenary Group to be the same power. The 3rd mercenary group, the Beast Mercenary Group, can't be underestimated either. It's also a large mercenary group with a great reputation in Cloud City. However, it's said that the captain of the Beast Mercenary Group and the City Lord of Cloud City are sworn brothers. They're as close as brothers. In Cloud City, all the powers have to give the Beast Mercenary Group some face. As for the last mercenary group, the Carnage Mercenary Group, it's said that they're not a local power of Cloud City. Instead, they're a wandering mercenary group. Ever since they came to Cloud City 5 years ago, they've never left. However, the Carnage Mercenary Group is very powerful. Although they don't have a lot of people, only around 300, every single one of them is an elite. It's said that the weakest person in the group is a Saint Master, and there are over 50 great Saint Masters. The captain and 2 vice captains are all Earth Saint Masters. They're the only power in Cloud City that has 3 Earth Saint Masters. They completely surpass the Bloodthorn Mercenary Group and the Blood Rose Mercenary Group. They're so powerful that all the powers in Cloud City fear them. Even the city Lord fears them. However, the Carnage Mercenary Group keeps an extremely low profile in Cloud City. The 3 of us spent a lot of effort to find out all this information. I've also heard that the Carnage Mercenary Group rarely goes out in the past 5 years. All the members basically hole up in their courtyards and don't come out at all. They don't have any source of income, and they don't have any businesses in Cloud City either. They're extremely mysterious. The Carnage Mercenary Group. Jianchen softly murmured as he pondered. From Ming Dong's introduction of the Carnage Mercenary Group, he also felt that this mercenary group was rather mysterious. Brother, this Carnage Mercenary Group might not be so simple. They don't come out at all. Are they hiding in their rooms to cultivate? Or do they have some great enemies outside and are afraid of being discovered? Bai Lian's bright eyes blinked as she stared at Jianchen's handsome face. A trace of admiration flashed through the depths of her eyes. Jianchen thought for a while and said, "It's hard to say right now. Ming Dong, where do the Carnage Mercenary Group live?" "It's not far from us. Follow this street and you'll reach it after walking for around 10 kilometers. They've bought a large courtyard there. There are over 300 people in the Carnage Mercenary Group, and they all live there," Ming Dong said. Jianchen slowly closed his eyes and extended the senses of his soul in the direction that Ming Dong had mentioned. Very soon, he found the large courtyard where the Carnage mercenaries resided. He observed everything that happened in the courtyard. Bai Lian's guess was correct. There were over 300 people in the Carnage Mercenary Group, and almost all of them were cultivating in their rooms. Every single one of them held a Class 3 or 4 monster core. They were extremely wealthy. Only a dozen or so people were scattered around the courtyard, responsible for keeping watch. There really were 3 Earth Saint Masters in the rather large courtyard at the center of the courtyard. Without any exception, they were all cultivating diligently. Jianchen slowly opened his eyes and murmured, "The Carnage Mercenary Group really isn't as simple as we thought." If we're talking about individual forces, the Carnage Mercenary Group is without a doubt the strongest in Cloud Capital. Jianchen, do you think we should subdue the Carnage Mercenary Group first? Ming Dong suggested. The Carnage Mercenary Group is quite mysterious. In my opinion, we should investigate the background of the Carnage Mercenary Group. Perhaps there is a powerful force behind the Carnage Mercenary Group. Dugu Feng expressed his opinion. Ming Dong frowned slightly and said, "The Carnage Mercenary Group keeps far too low a profile. They may have stayed in Cloud Capital for 5 years, but there's extremely little information about them. We've spent a tremendous amount of effort just to find out what's on the surface, let alone investigate their background. I think only the large clans in Cloud Capital know a little about them. However, we're not familiar with them, so it'll be extremely difficult to get this information from them. All right, let's not talk about it anymore. The Carnage Mercenary Group is indeed strange, but no matter what, we should still pay them a visit and find a chance to investigate their background," Jianchen said. Chapter 581. 15 minutes later, the group arrived at the Carnage Mercenary Group's residence. Although the Carnage Mercenary Group's residence wasn't small, the facade wasn't maintained properly. The simple and old door was tightly shut and covered in a thick layer of dust. It was obvious that it hadn't been cleaned for a long time. In front of the door, a few faint footprints could be seen. Jianchen examined the courtyard and laughed softly. "I wonder if the Carnage Mercenary Group is too lazy to take care of this, or if they're just too lazy. They've actually let their front door get so dirty. They really are different from the rest. It looks like the Carnage Mercenary Group is much more low-key than I imagined. If other clans had a force as powerful as the Carnage Mercenary Group, they would probably have decorated their front door beautifully long ago. It wouldn't be like this at all." Ming Dong also sighed in amazement. "Let's go in and take a look," said Jianchen. Jianchen's group dismounted from their mounts and walked towards the courtyard. Dugu Feng quickened his steps and was the first to arrive at the door. He extended his hand and patted the heavy door. Soon after, the tightly shut door of the Carnage Mercenary Group opened and revealed the face of a middle-aged man around 40 years old. The middle-aged man was bald, and his gaze was extremely sharp. There was a vicious scar on his forehead, which made him seem even more ferocious. The middle-aged man suspiciously glanced at the young women standing outside the door and asked coldly, "Who are you?" "We're from the Flame Mercenary Group. We've specially come to visit you today," said Jianchen. He cupped his hands with a smile. His movements were calm and natural. "The Flame Mercenary Group?" The bald, middle-aged man murmured softly. He frowned slightly because this name was far too unfamiliar to him. There wasn't a force called the Flame Mercenary Group among the major forces in Cloud Capital. The bald, middle-aged man sized up Jianchen's group again before his face sank. "Our Carnage Mercenary Group has important matters to attend to during this period of time. It's inconvenient for us to receive guests. Please return." With that, the middle-aged man retracted his head and tried to close the heavy door. However, no matter how hard he tried, the door wouldn't budge at all. Dugu Feng's hand was casually placed on the door, preventing the bald, middle-aged man from closing the door. The bald, middle-aged man's face sank when he saw this. His gaze immediately became sharp as he asked, "Sir, what is the meaning of this?" Jianchen smiled. "Is this how the Carnage Mercenary Group turns away guests?" With that, Jianchen walked forward and pushed open the 2 heavy doors, entering the Carnage Mercenary Group's courtyard. The bald, middle-aged man's face changed. He immediately stood in front of Jianchen and growled, "Sir, this is the territory of the Carnage Mercenary Group. If you dare to act recklessly again, don't blame us for being rude." The bald, middle-aged man's voice was extremely loud, attracting the attention of the people guarding the surroundings. Immediately, over 20 people quickly gathered from all directions. They all glared at Jianshin's group. Their faces were filled with killing intent. They were extremely unfriendly towards Jianshin's group. Both Mingdong and Dugu Feng revealed a hint of disdain when they saw the 20 or so ferocious-looking burly men before them. The captain of our flame mercenary group has personally come to visit your Carnage mercenary group. We've already given you enough face. Not only do you not appreciate it, but you've even turned us away. Is this how the Carnage mercenary group treats its guests? Go call your captain out, Mingdong sneered. Mingdong sneered. His presence as an Earth Saint Master completely erupted as well. A powerful pressure enveloped the entire courtyard, alarming all the people in the Carnage mercenaries. They immediately emerged from their rooms and quickly gathered at the entrance. Ha 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 ha. Our Carnage mercenary group obviously welcomes esteemed guests. It was our subordinates who didn't know any better before, so please don't take it to heart. Please forgive us if we've neglected you in any way. Suddenly, a clear laugh rang out from the front. 3 people in luxurious robes walked out from the central hall. The person who had spoken was the middle-aged man in the center. The middle-aged man seemed to be in his 40s and was extremely handsome. His facial features were regular, his skin was white, and his eyebrows were sharp. His eyes shone brightly from time to time. He wore a smile on his face and was extremely gentle. He seemed very amiable, making people develop a good impression of him unknowingly. The person walking on the left of the middle-aged man was still a burly man about the same age as him. Although the burly man was wearing a luxurious white robe and had a noble temperament, the wild nature that seemed to come from his body could not be concealed. His dressing made him look more like a wolf in sheep's clothing, which was somewhat out of place. Walking on the right side of the middle-aged man was an old man in his 70s. His face was full of wrinkles, and more than half of his white hair had fallen off. Only a few strands of withered hair remained on his head. He looked like an old man who was about to be buried at any time. Although that was the case, the old man's eyes shone brightly. They were extremely deep and seemed to be shrouded in a layer of mist, making it very difficult for people to see anything from his eyes. Captain! Captain! Greetings to the captain and the 2 vice-captains. More than 20 members of the Carnage mercenary group, who were crowding at the gate, saluted the middle-aged man who was walking in the middle. Their eyes were filled with respect. The middle-aged man stopped in front of Jianshin. His gaze first paused on Mingdong and Dugafeng, who were body length behind Jianshin, before finally landing on Jianshin at the very front. He clasped his hands and smiled. I am the captain of the Carnage mercenaries, Jianshin. The 2 beside me are the 2 vice-captains of the Carnage mercenaries. They are Shan Xiong and Mu Qi. Jianshin quickly sized up the 3 people in front of him before clasping his hands and replying, I am Jianshin, the captain of the Flame Mercenaries. This is Mingdong, the vice-captain and elder of the Flame Mercenaries, Dugafeng. When he heard Jianshin's name, Warsky suddenly felt that the name was somewhat familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before. However, he couldn't recall where he had heard it, but he was too busy greeting the guests to think about it. He hurriedly invited Jianshin's group in with a smile. Ha ha! Esteemed guests, please come in. Let's talk inside. Jianshin's group was warmly invited into the hall by Warsky. The decorations of the hall were very simple. It didn't have the luxurious decorations of a large organization at all. Jianshin and Warsky chatted casually for a while before getting to the main topic. Sir Warsky, I see that your Carnage mercenary group is hiding in your rooms and absorbing the energy from the monster cores to cultivate. You rarely come out, so I think that Sir Warsky must be from some large family or organization, Jianshin said without any hesitation. His face was calm and unperturbed. Warsky wasn't surprised by Jianshin's words at all. The Carnage mercenaries had already occupied Yenda City for 5 whole years. Their internal secrets were already public secrets to the large organizations in Yenda City. Ha ha! little brother Genshin must be joking. Our Carnage Mercenaries is only a small mercenary group. We rely on ourselves for everything. How could we have the support of a large organization? Although he said that, Worski's expression was filled with sorrow and pain. There was also a hint of desolation mixed in. Genshin's heart skipped a beat when he saw Worski's expression. He immediately guessed that Worski probably belonged to an organization that had lost its power. He had no intention of relying on anyone right now and was completely independent. Genshin immediately became rather happy when he thought of that. He said, "Sir Worski, I wouldn't have come here for no reason. I've come this time mainly to discuss something with Sir Worski." Worski immediately became serious as soon as Genshin was mentioned. He stared at Genshin in interest, waiting for him to continue. Genshin continued, "Sir Worski, you must know the rules of survival on the Tianyuan continent extremely well. In a world where the strong prey on the weak, only those with great strength can obtain better things. However, developing an organization isn't as simple as it sounds. There's still a very long path ahead, and there will be many obstacles along the way. If you're careless, you'll be doomed. I've actually come this time to ask Sir Worski to join our Flame Mercenaries. We can work together to develop our organization and strengthen our own group. What do you think?" The three of them were all surprised when they heard that. They stared at Genshin in shock. None of them had thought that the captain of the Flame Mercenaries, Genshin, would visit them with such intentions. Soon after, the three of them returned to their senses. Worski and the old man, Mu-Chi, sat there calmly, but Shanxiong was not as well-mannered as the two of them. His face was immediately filled with anger as he glared at Genshin. It was an extremely shocking sight. Chapter 582. Genshin faintly smiled. He did not refute Shanxiong's words and said, "I believe the three of you understand that it's impossible to become a large organization on the Tianyuan continent without great strength and backing. Although your Carnage Mercenary Group can be considered as a hegemon in Cloud Capital right now, you can only barely maintain your status because there are quite a few clans and sects in Cloud Capital that are on par with you, especially the 6 great clans. Although they're divided into 6 clans, they're as close as brothers and sisters. They can work together at any time. Once the 6 of them work together, there won't be a single organization in Cloud Capital that can contend against them." Worski and Mu-Chi did not say anything when they heard Genshin's words. Instead, they seemed to be in deep thought. Shanxiong seemed to find Genshin's words reasonable, so he fell silent for a moment as well. However, unconcealable anger remained on his face. "Brother Genshin, I admit that what you said is very reasonable. Although our Carnage Mercenary Group seems very impressive in Cloud Capital and is one of the largest mercenary groups in the city, we still fear the 6 great clans very much. Once they work together, there really won't be a single organization in Cloud Capital that can contend against them. However, the 6 great clans aren't the only ones in Cloud Capital. Aside from us, there are quite a few other powerful organizations in Cloud Capital as well. If the 6 great clans really do work together against us, we won't just sit around and wait for death. We'll definitely work together to contend against them," Worski said calmly. His expression remained the same. He did not show any displeasure at Genshin's request for the Carnage Mercenary Group to submit. This was because Worski had already noticed that Genshin and the others were not ordinary people. Although he was unable to sense Genshin's strength, he could clearly see Mingdong and Dugofeng, who did not conceal their presences. However, the 2 Earth Saint Masters were currently sitting to one side silently like subordinates, which emphasized Genshin's identity and status even more. Worski needed to treat him carefully and cautiously. "Sir Worski, what you said is not without reason. However, this is only enough to protect your Carnage Mercenary Group's position in Cloud Capital. Does your Carnage Mercenary Group plan to stay in this small city and not expand to the outside world?" Genshin smiled faintly. Kid, you sure are ambitious. Who doesn't want to expand their forces to the outside world? However, expanding to the outside world isn't as simple as just saying. Without the power to dominate a region, even the most basic self-preservation will be difficult. Does your flame mercenary group have the ability to do that? Shan Xiong sneered. Jianchen nodded in a rather conceited manner. That's right. Our flame mercenary group does have the ability to do that. How arrogant! Shan Xiong sneered. Worski's heart skipped a beat. He glanced at Jianchen deeply and thought about it for a while before saying, In this world, the strong are respected. This is a stage for the strong. The weak can only become food for the strong. I understand this rule very well. Worsky paused. He stared closely at Jianchen and said sternly, Little brother Jianchen, it won't be easy for our Carnage mercenary group to join your Flame mercenary group. Can you let us know the organization and background of the Flame mercenary group, as well as the direction of your future development? Jianchen smiled triumphantly when he heard that. He knew that Worsky had already given in. As long as his side was strong enough, he could easily subdue the Carnage mercenary group. The progress of the matter was much easier than he had imagined. Shan Xiong also understood the meaning behind Worsky's words. He could not help but panic. Captain! Worsky stopped Shan Xiong from continuing. Shan Xiong, there's no need for you to say anything more. I've already made my decision. Shan Xiong clenched his teeth, but he still closed his mouth in the end. He sat there quietly without saying anything. Jianchen smiled. Sir Worsky, the current scale of our Flame mercenary group is probably not enough to catch your attention. At the same time, we don't have any powerful backing, so we're completely relying on the few of us. However, it won't be long before we become the greatest organization in the Blue Wind Kingdom, or even the entire region. Worsky frowned slightly. Out of all the kingdoms in this region, Changyang Prefecture of the Kingdom of Jessen is probably the greatest organization. No one dares to provoke them. Does little brother Jianchen have the confidence to surpass the current Changyang Prefecture? Let's not talk about Changyang Prefecture. Let's talk about the peak organizations in the Blue Wind Kingdom. They all have Heaven Saint Masters. Does the Flame Mercenary Group have the ability to deal with these peak organizations? I think the peak organizations in the Blue Wind Kingdom will definitely not allow you to grow stronger. Jianchen smiled in disdain. Don't worry. If the peak organizations in the Blue Wind Kingdom really do come looking for trouble with us, we'll make sure they don't return, even if they have Heaven Saint Masters. As for Changyang Prefecture in the Kingdom of Jessen, Sir Worsky doesn't need to worry at all because it's impossible for us to come into conflict with Changyang Prefecture. A gleam of light flashed through Worsky's eyes. Do you come from the Kingdom of Jessen? And do you have a special relationship with Changyang Prefecture? With that, Worsky seemed to think of something. His eyes suddenly narrowed, and he immediately looked at the silent Mingdong. He asked in shock, Mingdong? You're called Mingdong? Are you that Mingdong from the Kingdom of Jessen who used a Heaven-tier battle skill to heavily injure a Heaven Saint Master? Mingdong grinned. That's right. That's me. I never thought that Captain Worsky would know my nickname. I'm really flattered. Worsky, Mu Qi, and Shan Xiong all gasped at the same time after Mingdong's identity was confirmed. They looked at each other, and their faces were filled with shock. Afterward, their gazes toward Mingdong completely changed. This was because they knew that the person before them, who did not seem to be older than 30, was a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. His extreme speed was something that even Heaven Saint Masters could do nothing about. At the same time, he possessed a Heaven-tier battle skill that countless experts coveted. He had once heavily injured a Heaven Saint Master in the northern fortress of the Kingdom of Jessen with a Heaven-tier battle skill. If the Heaven Saint Master had not been saved by his companions, he probably would have been the first person to die to an Earth Saint Master on the Tianyuan continent. I never thought that you would be that Mingdong who heavily injured a Heaven Saint Master. How disrespectful. Captain Jianchen must not have used his real name. If Old Man has guessed correctly, Captain Jianchen is the imperial protector of the kingdom of Jessen, the fourth young master of the Changyang prefecture. Changyang Shoten, said Mu Qi. His gaze toward Jianchen was filled with amazement. Jianchen did not deny it. He smiled. Old sir, you're extremely intelligent. I never thought that you would be able to guess that. You've earned my admiration. Mu Qi chuckled. Who doesn't know about the fourth young master's name now? Who doesn't know about him? Moreover, there have been rumors in the outside world that he has an extremely close relationship with the fourth young master of the Changyang prefecture after heavily injuring a Heaven Saint master in the frontier fortress of the kingdom of Jessen. He even stays in the Changyang prefecture for a long time. Yet now he has suddenly become a member of the Flame Mercenaries and has even willingly taken on the role of vice captain. The captain is actually a young man who's only in his 20s. In the end, when you connect everything that the fourth young master said before, the conclusion is extremely clear. If Old Man still can't guess the fourth young master's identity, then he's far too ignorant. Jianchen laughed heartily. May I ask if you're willing to join our Flame Mercenaries? The three of them looked at each other. After a moment of hesitation, Worskai said, Fourth young master, I have a few questions to ask you. Please speak, Jianchen said. May I ask if the Flame Mercenaries that the fourth young master has established belongs to the fourth young master, or the Changyang prefecture? And who do you pledge your loyalty to? Worskai asked sternly. Jianchen replied, The Flame Mercenaries aren't as complicated as you imagine them to be. They're completely under my control and have nothing to do with the Changyang prefecture or any other organization. You can think of the Flame Mercenaries as an independent organization that doesn't pledge loyalty to any organization. After a moment of hesitation, Worskai said, Fourth young master, our Carnage Mercenaries can join your Flame Mercenaries and become a part of the Flame Mercenaries. But the fourth young master must guarantee that all the members of the Carnage Mercenaries are under my control. All right. I can promise you that the Carnage Mercenaries will still be led by the three of you in the future. I won't interfere with your internal matters, but I hope that you can put the interests of the Flame Mercenaries above all else and listen to the orders of the group. Jianchen agreed without any hesitation. That's great. Since that's the case, let's join the Flame Mercenaries. I believe that following the fourth young master is an extremely wise choice. Worskai laughed heartily. He was extremely happy. Although he knew that this was equivalent to submitting to the Flame Mercenaries, he did not mind at all. Jianchen also felt extremely happy that he had managed to subdue the mysterious Carnage Mercenaries so easily. He said, Don't worry. In the near future, the Flame Mercenaries will definitely shake up the entire continent. With the matter settled, Jianchen did not stay in the Carnage Mercenaries for too long. He chatted with Worskai for a while and asked the three of them to come find him the next morning before leaving with Mingdong and the others. After Jianchen had left, Shanxiong said to Worskai reluctantly, Captain, are we just going to submit to the Flame Mercenaries like this? Mu Qi let out a long sigh as he became dazed. He said, Shanxiong, forget about your former identity for now. Joining the Flame Mercenaries might be an opportunity for us to restore our empire. Chapter 583. Subduing the Carnage Mercenary Group went much smoother than expected. On the way back, Jianchen and the others were very happy. The next morning, the three leaders of the Carnage Mercenary Group came to the inn where Jianchen was resting. They found Jianchen, and then Jianchen called Mingdong and the others to discuss things. Our next targets are the Blood Thorn Mercenary Group, the Blood Rose Mercenary Group, and the Beast Mercenary Group. These mercenary groups are the first to be subdued. The three of you have been in Cloud City for a long time, so you should be very familiar with them. Do you have any good plans? Jianchen looked at Worskai and the others. The three of them pondered for a while, and Mu Qi said, The Beast Mercenary Group has a close relationship with the city, Lord of Cloud City. It will take some effort to subdue them, but the Blood Rose Mercenary Group and the Blood Thorn Mercenary Group is much easier. In my opinion, we should start with them first. That's right, it is indeed much easier to subdue the Blood Rose Mercenary Group and the Blood Thorn Mercenary Group. The leader of the Blood Thorn Mercenary Group is infatuated with the leader of the Blood Rose Mercenary Group. If we want to subdue them, we should start with the Blood Rose Mercenary Group. As long as we subdue the Blood Rose Mercenary Group, then the Blood Thorn Mercenary Group will not be a problem. Warsky also expressed his opinion. Hearing the two's words, Genshin thought that it was very reasonable and said, "In that case, let's subdue the Blood Rose Mercenary Group first. The three of you can come with me. We have some friendship with the leader of the Blood Rose Mercenary Group, Jasmine. This time, we can go and persuade her," Warsky said. After the discussion, Genshin and the others left the inn together. They all rode their mounts and went straight to the location of the Blood Rose Mercenary Group. The Blood Rose Mercenary Group was more than 30 kilometers away from the inn where Genshin and the others were staying. There was also a lot of people on the street. Genshin and the others rode slowly on their magic beast mounts for the time it took to burn an incense stick to reach the Blood Rose Mercenary Group's location. The Blood Rose Mercenary Group and the Carnage Mercenary Group both lived in a large courtyard, but the environment was very different compared to the Carnage Mercenary Group. The entrance of the courtyard was not only clean, there was not even a speck of dust, but there were also 2 guards standing in front of the entrance. Because the 3 leaders of the Carnage Mercenary Group were in Genshin's group, the guards did not dare to stop them at all. They did not even have the process of reporting. They were very courteously invited them in. At the same time, they sent people to inform the leader. At the same time, Genshin and the others sat down in the main hall of the Blood Rose Mercenary Group, quietly waiting for the captain. Not long after they sat down, a heroic girl came in from outside. "Hee, Zhantian, Muqi, Shanxiong. What wind blew you 3 busy people here today? The 3 of you have personally come to my Blood Rose Mercenary Group. Your presence really brings light to my small, humble dwelling." Hearing the voice, Genshin looked over. He saw that the person who came was a middle-aged woman about 30 years old. She was graceful and luxurious. She was quite beautiful. She was wearing a dark green long skirt. Her dark green long hair was tied into a very beautiful bow at the back of her head. She looked even more capable. "Hee, Leader Jasmine is too serious. We haven't seen each other for 2 years. Compared to 2 years ago, Leader Jasmine looks even more beautiful." Zhantian stood up and cupped his hands with a smile. Leader Jasmine smiled generously. Soon after, her gaze swept over Genshin and the others and said, "I wonder who these brothers are." Genshin cupped his hands towards Leader Jasmine and said with a smile, "This one is Genshin, the leader of the Raging Flame Mercenary Group." "Raging Flame Mercenary Group?" Jasmine muttered in a low voice and said, "Brother Genshin shouldn't be someone from our cloud capital city, right?" "That's right. We are indeed not a force from Cloud Capital City." Genshin did not deny it and continued, "Leader Jasmine, the reason why we've come to visit this time is because our Raging Flame Mercenary Group has a matter to discuss with your esteemed group." Leader Jasmine directly walked to a table and sat down. She lazily stretched her body and said, "Continue speaking. Don't stop halfway." Genshin smiled and said, "Then this one will be frank. Leader Jasmine, I want your Blood Rose Mercenary Group to join our Raging Flame Mercenary Group." As soon as Genshin finished speaking, Jasmine's body immediately stiffened. Her originally calm gaze also suddenly became fierce as she stared closely at Genshin. "What did you say?" Leader Jasmine said word by word with a serious expression. This one wants Leader Jasmine to lead the Blood Rose Mercenary Group to join our Raging Flame mercenary group and become a part of the Raging Flame mercenary group. Genshin's expression was calm as he repeated what he had just said. Leader Jasmine stared fiercely at Genshin for a while. From Genshin's expression, she could already tell that the other party was not joking. She could not help but shake her head and say with a cold smile, "Little brother, you can't make such a joke so casually." Genshin chuckled and said, "I'm not joking. Moreover, the Carnage Mercenary Group has already joined our Raging Flame Mercenary Group. If Leader Jasmine does not believe me, you can ask War Sky and the other two." Leader Jasmine's expression changed. She immediately looked at the three of them, but all she received was a nod from them. Leader Jasmine was shocked. The Carnage Mercenary Group was the most powerful organization in the Cloud Capital. Just a single group possessed 3 Earth Saint Masters. Yet they had suddenly joined an unknown mercenary group. She found this very hard to believe. How is that possible? War Sky, Mu Chi, Shan Xiong, has your Carnage Mercenary Group really joined the Raging Flame Mercenary Group? Leader Jasmine involuntarily cried out, "That's right. We have indeed joined the Raging Flame Mercenary Group. This is not a lie, it's the truth. We believe that only by joining the Raging Flame Mercenary Group can we establish ourselves on the Tianyuan continent in the future and not hide in a tiny city like we are right now," War Sky calmly replied. "Is the Raging Flame Mercenary Group really that powerful?" Leader Jasmine asked. However, her gaze would sweep past Genshin from time to time. Her eyes were filled with doubt. Genshin smiled and said, "Captain Jasmine, may I ask what level is the strongest battle skill you've mastered right now?" Although Leader Jasmine was very confused by Genshin's question, she still answered truthfully, 2 high human tier battle skills. "Leader Jasmine, I'll tell you the first benefit of joining the Flame Mercenary Group. As long as you're an Earth Saint Master, we'll teach you a basic Earth tier battle skill for free," Genshin smiled. Leader Jasmine's eyes lit up when she heard that. Her gaze burned with desire. Earth tier battle skills were rare in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Currently, only a few peak organizations possessed Earth tier battle skills. It was not just her. Even the hearts of the 3 of them suddenly skipped a beat. Their breathing became ragged. However, Genshin's following words shocked all of them. In the future, if there are people who have made great contributions to the group or are completely loyal to the group, I can teach them high-tier Earth tier battle skills, or even Heaven-tier battle skills, Genshin smiled. What? Heaven-tier battle skills? Do you possess a Heaven-tier battle skill? Squad leader Jasmine lost her usual composure and cried out hoarsely. Her red phoenix eyes were wide open and her face was filled with shock. "That's right, I do indeed possess a Heaven-tier battle skill, and not just one. How about it, Captain Jasmine? Shouldn't you consider joining our Flame Mercenary Group? Once you join our Flame Mercenary Group, you'll be completely loyal and contribute greatly, and you'll be able to obtain a Heaven-tier battle skill extremely easily. This is something that many people dream of." Genshin smiled. Right now, he only wanted to quickly strengthen the Flame Mercenary Group. He would not be stingy with the core members of the Eternal Flame Mercenary Group. He would treat all of them equally. The allure of a Heaven-tier battle skill was extremely great. Unless it was someone who had already grasped a Heaven-tier battle skill, no one would be able to resist its allure. This time, Leader Jasmine only pondered for a short moment before agreeing to Genshin's suggestion. She agreed to lead the Blood Rose Mercenary Group into the Flame Mercenary Group. After subduing the Blood Rose Mercenary Group, Genshin, Jasmine, and Zhan Tian discussed the details of the plan. They stayed until the afternoon before leaving. Jasmine, the leader of the Blood Rose Mercenary Group, also left with them. When they openly walked on the street on their magical beast mounts, they immediately caused quite a commotion. The 3 leaders of the mysterious Carnage Mercenary Group and the leader of the Blood Rose Mercenary Group were actually walking together. Moreover, They were walking behind a young man at the same time. This was enough to make many people think that there was something going on, and this news quickly spread throughout Cloud Capital. However, Jianqin and the others didn't care about this at all. They rode their magical beast mounts directly to the Blood-Thorn Mercenary Group's territory and subdued them. The leader of the Blood-Thorn Mercenary Group was a forthright man called Hani. However, he was truly infatuated with the leader of the Blood-Rose Mercenary Group, Jasmine. Even though Jasmine always treated him with indifference, his infatuation didn't diminish. When he learned that the Blood-Rose Mercenary Group had already joined the Flame Mercenary Group, he didn't hesitate to lead all the members of the Blood-Thorn Mercenary Group to join the Flame Mercenary Group. He only hoped that his relationship with Jasmine would improve further in the future. In short, subduing the Blood-Thorn Mercenary Group was very easy. In less than 10 minutes, Jianqin had the Blood-Thorn Mercenary Group join. He didn't even mention any enticing conditions. Now, the Carnage Mercenary Group, the Blood-Rose Mercenary Group, and the Blood-Thorn Mercenary Group in Cloud Capital had completely merged into one. They had changed their name to the Flame Mercenary Group, causing the Flame Mercenary Group's strength to increase by a lot in just 2 short days. This made Jianqin extremely happy. The Flame Mercenary Group had finally become powerful. However, there was no such thing as an absolute secret in the world. The news of the 3 mercenary groups joining together was quickly learned by the 6 great clans, the City Lord's estate, and a few other large organizations. Everyone immediately became nervous. With the 3 mercenary groups suddenly working together, there were a total of 5 Earth Saint Masters. Their strength was almost on par with the combined forces of the 6 great clans. Chapter 584. In a secret underground chamber that was not hidden, the leaders of the 6 great clans of Cloud City sat together with solemn expressions, their brows tightly furrowed. I believe everyone already knows that the Blood-Thorn Mercenary Group, the Blood-Rose Mercenary Group, and the Carnage Blood Mercenary Group have joined forces and formed a powerful group. This is very disadvantageous for us. An old man said in a deep voice, "That's right. Once the 3 mercenaries work together, they'll have a total of 5 Earth Saint Masters. They'll be so powerful that they won't be much weaker than our 6 clans working together. In my opinion, we need to do something or the consequences will be unthinkable," a white-robed, middle-aged man sternly said. "Taking action is inevitable, but I think we need to find out why the 3 mercenary groups suddenly joined forces and changed their name to the Raging Flame Mercenary Group. Today, I heard from my subordinates that the leaders of the Carnage Mercenary Group and the Blood-Rose Mercenary Group were actually walking behind a young man. Could it be that they were subdued by this young man?" said an old man. "Looks like this young man's identity is not so simple. But no matter what his identity is, we can't just watch them grow. This young man has actually subdued 3 mercenaries in just 2 short days. This shows just how ambitious he is. It's very likely that the 3 mercenaries won't be able to satisfy him. Once he subdues all the other organizations in the city, it's very likely that his final target will be us. That makes sense. If we continue to sit here and wait for death, we'll only be digging our own graves. Once the Flame mercenaries surpass us in strength, they'll swallow us whole with their bloody mouth. We need to take action now. There's no time to lose." The 6 of them discussed intensely around a round table. The rapid growth of the Flame mercenaries made them feel extremely uneasy. A white-haired old man gently coughed and said, "Everyone, Old Man has thought of a way to stop the Flame mercenaries from growing stronger. Since the Flame mercenaries can swallow up all the other organizations in the city, why can't we do the same? Let's do this. Let's form an alliance immediately and get all the organizations in the city to join us in the name of protecting their freedom and status. Once an external organization invades, we'll all work together to fend them off." That's right. This is a good way to stop the Flame mercenaries from growing. With the Flame Mercenaries' current strength, we'll suffer heavy losses if we want to destroy them. Once the alliance is formed, if the Flame Mercenaries try to swallow up any of the organizations in the alliance, we'll have plenty of reason to move against them. At that time, we can borrow the power of the entire city to destroy the Flame Mercenaries. We'll be able to achieve the greatest results with the smallest price. Yes, that's what we should do. However, I think the Flame Mercenaries will definitely move against the other organizations in the city. We need to stop them from growing stronger, or it won't be so easy to deal with them in the future. Once we return, we'll immediately send people to keep an eye on them. We need to stop them as soon as they do anything. Then it's settled. Time is of the essence, so let's begin the arrangements as soon as we return. In less than 10 minutes, the 6 clans came up with a plan to deal with the Flame Mercenaries. The Flame Mercenaries had grown far too quickly, actually subduing the Carnage Mercenaries, Blood Rose Mercenaries, and Bloodthorn Mercenaries in just 2 short days. This made the 6 clans feel fear. If they wanted to maintain their status in the city and prevent themselves from being swallowed up, they could only suppress the Flame Mercenaries with everything they had. The members of the 6 great clans could be said to have acted extremely quickly. As soon as the meeting was over, they immediately took action and tried their best to rope in all the organizations with a certain level of strength within Cloud Capital. These organizations all knew about the Flame Mercenaries, so most of them did not hesitate and chose to temporarily join the alliance formed by the 6 great clans. With their addition, the alliance's strength rapidly increased as well. Coupled with the people of the 6 clans, they now had over 10 Earth Saint Masters. Although Jianqin had heard about the actions of the 6 clans, he did not care at all. Their actions were completely useless in Jianqin's eyes, having no effect at all. The next morning, Jianqin gathered the commanders of the Blood Rose Mercenaries, Hani and Zhan Tian together. Before Jianqin was a stack of old books. Jianqin pushed the books to the center and said, "Since you've all joined my Flame Mercenaries, I should fulfill my promise. Here are our 5 basic Earth tier battle skills. You can each choose one that suits you and memorize it. If anyone in your group breaks through to Earth Saint Master in the future, you can pass the Earth tier battle skill to them. In the future, once you have made great contributions and are loyal to the Flame Mercenaries, I will naturally pass the Heaven tier battle skill to you." "Thank you, Captain." Their gazes immediately began to burn as they looked at the books on the table. After emotionally thanking him, they began to choose in a hurry. Among the 5 of them, the captain of the Bloodthorn Mercenaries was the most excited. He had joined the Flame Mercenaries completely because of Jasmine. He had never thought that he would receive such great benefits after joining the Flame Mercenaries. In particular, he felt like his heart was about to jump out of his chest when he heard about the Heaven tier battle skill that Jianqin had mentioned. Without a doubt, Jianqin's actions were the best way to win their hearts. After receiving the Earth tier battle skills, the 5 of them began to rejoice that they had come across the Flame Mercenaries. Jianqin also smiled when he saw how excited the 5 of them were. He was very satisfied with this outcome. After a moment of hesitation, Jianqin said, "Our Flame Mercenaries will not be staying in Cloud Capital for long. We may leave in a few days, so don't let your people go out for activities for the next few days." "Captain, may I ask, does our Flame Mercenaries have a base? Where are we going to settle down? We can't just bring so many people and wander all over the place, right?" Hani asked. Jianqin furrowed his brows and pondered for a while before replying, "This has not been decided yet. For now, it's best to develop the power of the mercenaries. After we've subdued the forces in Cloud Capital, we'll slowly subdue all the large mercenary forces in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Finally, we'll continue to expand in the surrounding kingdoms." Hearing these words, Hani and Jasmine, who did not know about Jianqin's background, were shocked. They had never thought that Jianqin's ambition would be so great. He actually wanted to annex all the mercenary forces in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Even the nearby kingdoms had become his targets. All right, let's end today's discussion here. Next, the 5 of you will use the name of the Flame Mercenaries to subdue all the organizations with Earth Saint Masters in Cloud Capital. Jianqin said. Now that the 5 of them were present, he no longer needed to personally deal with the matter of reorganizing Cloud Capital. It was enough to leave it to the 5 of them. The 5 of them accepted the order and left at the same time. After the 5 of them had left, Jianqin hugged the white tiger that was happily playing on the bed. He gently stroked its soft fur as he sank into his thoughts, thinking about what to do next. Right now, the first thing Jianqin needed to do was to develop his own organization. He had once promised Uncle Kendall that he would develop the Flame Mercenaries into the greatest mercenary group on the Tianyuan continent. Since he had said that he needed to do it, not only was this a promise, but it was also a goal in his heart. This was because the Flame Mercenaries was an organization that completely belonged to him. Although there was not a single Heaven Saint Master in the Flame Mercenaries aside from him, Jianqin was not in a hurry. This was because he also understood that although the Flame Mercenaries were beginning to take shape, they were still a child. Their heritage was shallow, and they could not even compare to some of the peak organizations in the Blue Wind Kingdom. However, this was something that needed time to slowly accumulate. This included the new members of the Flame Mercenaries. Right now, Jianqin could not guarantee that they would be loyal to the Flame Mercenaries. Without any exaggeration, Jianqin could not find a single person he could trust in the Flame Mercenaries other than Er's group, including Zhan Tian and the others. However, what Jianqin needed right now was not their trust, but fresh blood and manpower. He believed that once the Flame Mercenaries truly flourished, the members would develop deep feelings for the mercenaries. They would treat the mercenaries like their own home. Kyle and the others were a very good example. Unknowingly, Jianqin had already spent 2 hours in his room thinking. At this moment, a knock suddenly rang out, interrupting Jianqin's thoughts. Jianqin stared at the tightly shut door and said, "Come in." At the entrance, Ming Dong, who was dressed in black, and De Gafeng, who was still dressed in fiery red robes, walked in side by side. Jianqin, Zhan Tian, and the others have run into trouble. When they went to take over a sect, they just happened to run into the people of the 6 great clans of the Cloud Capital. They've been trapped in the sect, so they can't retreat even if they want to, Ming Dong said with a rather ugly expression. Jianqin frowned slightly when he heard that. He murmured, "I never thought that the 6 great clans would move so quickly. This has exceeded my expectations." Chapter 585. After a moment of thought, Jianqin said, "All right then. Since the 6 clans have come to get in our way, I might as well go all the way and subdue them all. It'll save me the trouble. Lead the way. I'll go over right now." Afterward, Jianqin called Yu Yu and Tai Ta to leave the inn together. They mounted their class 3 magical beasts and quickly disappeared into the end of the street. At this moment, in a luxurious courtyard in Cloud Capital City, hundreds of burly men were crowded inside. They formed a circle that surrounded a small group of about 50 people, and it was so tight that not even a drop of water could leak through. Within this small group of over 50 people, the 5 people standing at the very front were the most eye-catching. In Cloud City, there were probably only a few people who did not recognize them. This was because they were the leader of the Blood Thorn Mercenary Group, Honey, the leader of the Blood Rose Mercenary Group, Jasmine, the leader of the Carnage Mercenary Group, War Sky, and the 2 vice leaders, Shan Xiong and Muchi Molly and Hanai, stared at the people around them sternly. Their gazes lingered on the people at the very front for a long time. They were extremely stern because all of them were famous in the city. They were all Earth Saint Masters, and there were even some people who had been Earth Saint Masters for many years who were much more powerful than them. They could easily take on 2 people by themselves. On the other hand, Zhan Tian, Mu Qi, and Shan Xiong all had relaxed expressions on their faces. Even though they were surrounded by more than 10 experts of the same level, there was not the slightest bit of worry on their faces. Instead, there was a faint sneer of disdain and ridicule. The two sides remained in a stalemate for a while before Jean Tian aggressively took a step forward. He sneered. "Everyone, may I ask what is the meaning of this? Do you want to start a war with the Flame mercenaries?" Sai, Jean Tian, Mu Chi, Shan Xiong, Jasmine, Honey. Although we aren't very familiar with each other, we've met each other a few times. What we didn't expect was that all of you would give up the good post of captain and choose to join the blazing mercenaries, willing to become pawns with no future. Is this worth it? It was as though he felt that it was not worth it for Jean Tian's group of 5 to become someone else's subordinates. Jean Tian, Jasmine, Honey, the 3 of you should withdraw from the Raging Flame mercenary group. Think about how glorious it is to be the leader of a faction. Why do you need to become someone else's lackey? This is simply an insult to your status. A middle-aged man also opened his mouth to advise them. That's right, Jean Tian. Your Carnage mercenary group is the most powerful mercenary group in Cloud City. Now, you have to sacrifice your entire group's strength for someone else. It's not worth it. It's still not too late to turn back now. With the power of our cloud capital, we will definitely be able to drive out the evil forces. The leaders of many forces were trying to persuade Worski's group of 5 to leave the Blazing Flame mercenary group. Unless they had no other choice, they didn't want to start a fight with Jean Tian's group of 5. As the saying goes, if you kill 1,000 enemies, you will lose 800 of your own men. Moreover, the strength of the 3 great mercenary groups commanded by Jean Tian and the other 2 couldn't be underestimated. Once the 2 sides started fighting, they would also suffer some losses. That's enough. All of you stop talking. Mu Chi waved his hand somewhat impatiently. We're all proud to be able to join the Blazing Flame mercenary group. Don't use these harsh words to provoke us, because it's completely useless. That's right. I, Hani, am extremely fortunate to be able to join the Blazing Flame mercenary group. You people from the 6 great families should stop fanning the flames and sowing discord between us and the Blazing Flame mercenary group. It's completely a waste of effort. The leader of the Bloodthorn mercenary group, Harry, also frowned impatiently. He had obtained an Earth-tier battle skill that he had yearned for even in his dreams as soon as he joined the Blazing Flame mercenary group. It had almost driven him crazy with excitement, so he was naturally very protective of this group that he had just joined. The expressions of the leaders of the 6 great families and the other forces all became rather gloomy. One of them said with a heavy voice, "It looks like you've been poisoned too deeply. There's no saving you. Hee, everyone. It seems that us joining the Blazing Flame mercenary group has nothing to do with you at all. Since when do we need you to interfere in our own affairs?" Worsky laughed loudly. Everyone chose to remain silent in response to Worsky's words. Worsky ignored the people from the 6 great families and looked at an old man beside him. He clasped his hands and said, "Patriarch Jerry, may I ask if you've considered the suggestion I made earlier? If you join our Blazing Flame mercenary group, you will receive something you'll never be able to obtain in your entire life. Moreover, your future will be limitless. How dare you, Worsky? Jerry is already a member of our alliance, yet you're trying to recruit him before so many of us. What do you think of our alliance?" An old man called out with a heavy voice. His face was rather ugly. The Blazing Flame mercenary group that Worsky and the others represented was becoming more and more lawless. They actually showed no fear before so many of them, which made many of them feel rather uneasy. There had to be a reason for this abnormality. I never thought that this place would be much livelier than I imagined. I think all the influential organizations in Cloud Capital have gathered here. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out from outside. A few young men and women swaggered in from outside. All of them wore luxurious clothes and possessed extraordinary bearings. The eyes of Worsky and the others lit up when they saw them, because the people who had come this time were Genshin's group. Everyone in the courtyard stared at Genshin's group. Their faces were extremely hostile. "Who are you?" A middle-aged man glared at Jianshin's group and called out harshly, "This is the captain of our Blazing Flame mercenary group." Before Jianshin could say anything, Warsky took the initiative to introduce him. He knew that Jianshin was a peak heaven Saint Master with a limitless future, so he obviously had to curry favor with him. Everyone stared at Jianshin in surprise after hearing Warsky's introduction. They were extremely surprised. Many of them had never thought that the captain of the Flame mercenary group that had subdued the 3 great mercenary groups of Cloud Capital would be a young man who did not even seem to be in his 20s. And I had thought that the captain of the Flame mercenary group would be some great figure. I never thought that he would be a child who still smells of his mother's milk. What a joke! A black-robed old man mocked. I never thought that the 3 great mercenary groups of Cloud Capital would be willing to submit to a child who still smells of his mother's milk. Sigh, what a pity! A skinny old man shook his head and sighed. Jianshin's eyes turned cold when he heard what the 2 of them had said. He called out, "Mingdong, Dugafeng!" Mingdong and Dugafeng understood what he meant. They both drew their saint weapons and charged toward the 2 people who had spoken. Their saint weapons surged with energy as they stabbed toward the 2 of them. The 2 old men who had spoken were also the leaders of a group. They were also Earth Saint Masters, so they reacted extremely quickly. They immediately drew their saint weapons to block the attacks. The giant sword in Dugufeng's hand blazed with flames as it collided with his opponent's saint weapon with a thunderous boom. His opponent, the black-robed old man, was forced to stagger backwards by the impact. A 3rd cycle Earth Saint Master! The black-robed old man was surprised, but in the next moment his face drastically changed from fright when he heard Dugufeng's words. Earth Tier Battle Skill, World Splitter. Dugufeng's huge sword shone with a bright light as powerful energy surged from it. He then wielded the sword with both hands and raised it high above his head. He swung it toward the black-robed old man with enough force to split a mountain. The black-robed old man wanted to dodge, but a powerful pressure suddenly appeared and pressed down on his body. He felt like he was in a quagmire, like he was being weighed down by a huge rock. Even moving was difficult. In the end, he had no choice but to use a human tier battle skill. He knew to block Dugufeng's Earth tier battle skill. The clash between a human tier battle skill and an Earth tier battle skill was like throwing an egg at a rock. The black-robed old man was blown far away as blood constantly spurted from his mouth. He was heavily injured. At the same time, the skinny old man was heavily injured by Mingdong as well. He fell to the ground 20 meters away, creating a small crack. His face was pale as he constantly coughed up blood. His injuries were much more severe than the black-robed old man's. Although Mingdong did not use a battle skill, his strength as a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master was extremely terrifying. Dealing with a 2nd cycle Earth Saint Master was a piece of cake for him. The strength that Mingdong and Dugufeng had displayed surprised quite a few people, but they were not afraid because they had over a dozen experts on their side. They possessed an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. No matter how powerful their opponents were, they could still suppress them. However, the Earth tier battle skill that Dugufeng displayed was something that everyone coveted. Everyone looked at Dugufeng with undisguised greed in their eyes. How dare you touch a member of our alliance? Everyone attacked together. Suddenly, an old man bellowed out. He immediately drew his saint weapon and charged toward Dugufeng. His eyes burned with desire. The other Earth Saint Masters all returned to their senses with the old man's words. All of them rushed toward Dugufeng. Jianshin sneered as he watched the experts charge toward Dugufeng. He sneered, "You don't know what's good for you." With that, Jianshin reached out with both hands, and surging energy of the world rapidly gathered. Afterward, he suddenly pushed his hands forward, and an extremely surging storm of energy erupted from his hands. It seemed like a furious dragon was roaring as it rapidly charged forward. The dozen or so Earth Saint Masters charging at Dugufeng did not even have the time to react before they were struck by the surging energy. The clothes on the upper half of their bodies were instantly reduced to dust before they all spat out a mouthful of dark red blood. Their bodies were like broken kites as they flew back several dozen meters before crashing to the ground in an extremely miserable manner. In less than a breath's time, the awe-inspiring Earth Saint Masters were all heavily injured and lying on the ground. Chapter 586. Although the spacious courtyard of the Jelly Clan was filled with several hundred people, it was completely silent at this moment. Only the heavy breathing of countless people could be heard. Everyone stared in shock at the dozen or so Earth Saint Masters who had been blown away and could not get up even after a long time. Their faces were filled with disbelief and shock. Even Ha-Enai and Jasmine, who did not know Genshin's exact strength, were stunned by Genshin's sudden display of strength. They stared at Genshin in disbelief, unable to return to their senses even after a long time. Just what kind of strength was this to heavily injure over a dozen Earth Saint Masters in a single move? Wow, brother, you're so powerful. You dealt with over a dozen Earth Saint Masters without any effort at all. Is this the strength of a Heaven Saint Master? You're just too powerful. Suddenly, a clear and excited voice rang out in the silent courtyard, breaking the silence. Bai Lian stood beside Genshin, staring at him in admiration. She was so excited that her face had become pink. The 4 words Heaven Saint Master were like a heavy hammer, viciously striking everyone's chests, causing them to violently tremble. Afterward, everyone's gazes toward Genshin were filled with deep shock. None of them dared to believe that the young man before them, who was only in his 20s, was actually a peak Heaven Saint Master. Even in the entire Blue Wind Kingdom, a person like that would be in existence that stood at the very top of the pyramid. Even the king would need to treat them courteously as equals. Jasmine and Ha-Enai both stared at Genshin blankly. Only now did the 2 of them realize in shock that the captain of the flame mercenaries they had come into such close contact with was actually a peak Heaven Saint Master. Even in the current Blue Wind Kingdom, there were only a pitiful 4 of them left. All of them possessed great statuses and were not people they could come into contact with. So our captain is actually a Heaven Saint Master. Mali's and Hani's minds continuously reverberated with this thought. At this moment, the 2 of them were unprecedentedly excited. Their fiercely beating hearts seemed as though they were about to jump out of their chests. Apart from Genshin's group, the only ones who were able to remain calm were Worski's trio. They had already known about Genshin's identity, so they weren't surprised at all. At this moment, the Earth Saint Masters that had been blown away by Genshin stood up with great difficulty. Such a simple action was extremely difficult to perform, but the way they looked at Genshin had completely changed. Their faces were filled with shock. Why? You're actually a Heaven Saint Master. A middle-aged man in tight robes said with a trembling voice. He was the patriarch of one of the 6 great clans of Cloud Capital. Genshin hugged the white tiger on his shoulder as he coldly stared at the heavily injured Earth Saint Masters. He emotionlessly said, "Since you've all worked together to attack my flame mercenaries, I obviously won't let you go so easily. Submit to me and prosper, or oppose me and die. Make your choice." The faces of the Earth Saint Masters all became rather ugly, but none of them dared to say anything. The deterrence of a Heaven Saint Master was just too great. They didn't even dare to say anything. If a Heaven Saint Master wanted to kill them, it would be as easy as killing an ant. They did not even have the ability to flee. With Genshin's words, the entire courtyard fell silent. No one dared to say anything. A while later, an old man slowly arrived before Genshin. He knelt down on one knee and politely said, "Esteemed expert, I am Jerry. The patriarch of the Jerry clan is extremely honored to be able to serve esteemed expert. We are willing to join the flame mercenaries under your command." The old man was also an Earth Saint Master, as well as the master of the mansion. Jianchen nodded with a smile. Very good. Our flame mercenaries will not mistreat anyone. It is the honor of our Jerry clan to serve esteemed expert. We don't dare to ask for anything, Jerry seriously replied. Being able to join an organization led by a Heaven Saint Master was something that many people yearned for even in their dreams. Not only was it a great backing, it was also a symbol of a peak organization. Although they would lose their authority, their status would undoubtedly increase by a lot. Jianchen looked at the other Earth Saint Masters and asked, "What do you think? I don't have that much time to wait for you." Quite a few of them were hesitant. Not everyone was like Jerry, willing to give up the foundation they had built up over many years as long as they could find a powerful backer. They were extremely unwilling to hand over the world that they had worked so hard for over many years to someone else. You seemed to be able to guess what they were worried about when she saw their hesitant expressions. She said, "Don't worry. After joining the Flame Mercenaries, they won't take away your authority. As long as they belong to your clan, they'll still be under your command." Their eyes lit up, and they all looked at Jianchen with questioning gazes. Jianchen smiled. "That's right. After joining the Flame Mercenaries, I won't take away your authority. Your people will still be under your command, but everything has to be in the interests of the Flame Mercenaries. You can't do anything that will harm the interests of the Flame Mercenaries or betray the Flame Mercenaries. Otherwise, I think you all understand the consequences." Jianchen's tone also became stern towards the end. "Whatever. If that's the case, my Chaiyang sect will join your Flame Mercenaries. I hope the captain will not go back on his word and will not take away our authority over our disciples." An old man was the first to agree. "Of course. I can guarantee that to all of you," Jianchen confirmed, calming everyone down. After receiving Jianchen's confirmation, the leaders no longer hesitated. Including the 6 great clans, they all chose to join the Flame Mercenaries. Jianchen was extremely happy that all the organizations had submitted. This was because the Flame Mercenary strength had increased by several times with their addition. Coupled with Worski's group of 5, the Flame Mercenaries now possessed over 20 Earth Saint Masters. Now, the Flame Mercenaries had truly become a peak force. Of course, this was only relative to small kingdoms like the Blue Wind Kingdom. If the Flame Mercenaries were thrown onto the vast Tianyuan continent, they would only be a child that had not grown up. Once we get back, change the sign above the entrance yourselves. Hang the banner of the Flame Mercenaries on all of them," Jianchen said in a commanding tone. "Yes, sir." The leaders all replied. They were all smart people. Since they had already joined the Flame Mercenaries, they knew what position they stood in. "I'll give you a few days to recover. At the same time, you should deal with the internal matters of your clans. Once you've recovered, leave the city with me," Jianchen said. However, what he said at the end surprised quite a few people. If we leave Cloud Capital, then the foundation we've built in Cloud Capital. An old man's face was filled with difficulty. He was very reluctant to abandon the world that he had painstakingly built over the past few decades. "You're interested in just this little bit of land? How short-sighted. Don't worry, follow our captain's footsteps. Our captain will lead you to the peak sooner or later. It'll be much better than hiding in a tiny piece of land in the Cloud Capital." Warsky snorted coldly. Hearing this, everyone gradually felt relieved. Afterwards, Jianchen handed over a few more matters before dispersing. Now that the mission was complete, he did not stay outside any longer. He left with Mingdong, Warsky, and the others. With the addition of the 6 great clans and over a dozen other organizations, there were no longer any organizations that could catch Jianchen's attention. In just 3 days, Jianchen had basically subdued all the decent organizations in the city. "Wow, brother, you really are amazing. You made these large clans join our Flame Mercenaries so easily. If we were in Phoenix Sun City, every single one of them would be no weaker than the 3 great clans of Phoenix Sun City." Bai Lian followed behind Jianchen excitedly. Everything that had happened today was something that she would never have dared to dream about in the past. Jianqin could not help but smile gently when he saw how happy Bai Lian was. In particular, Jianqin's heart warmed when he heard Bai Lian call him brother. Now, other than protecting Bai Lian from harm, he also wanted her to be happy every day. This was his responsibility as a big brother. Bai Lian, you haven't even condensed a saint weapon yet. You have to work hard on your cultivation in the future. Only when you're strong can you do more things. If you need monster cores, feel free to ask your brother for them, Jianqin said. Chapter 587. Jianqin bitterly smiled. Bai Lian, you're oversimplifying things. I'm not as glorious as I seem on the surface. I actually have quite a lot of guts on my shoulders. Bai Lian blinked her large eyes as she stared at Jianqin curiously. She asked, Brother, can you tell me what kind of burden it is? Jianqin gently sighed. He did not dwell on the topic and change the topic. Bai Lian, your talent may be lacking, but there are many heavenly resources that can change a person's constitution. Once I come across heavenly resources like that in the future, I'll buy them for you so that you can completely change. Heavenly resources that can change a person's constitution are at least 10,000 years old. Although there are heavenly resources like that on the Tianyuan continent, every single one of them is priceless. You can only come across them in prosperous kingdoms. Small kingdoms like the Kingdom of Jessin and the Blue Wind Kingdom basically won't have treasures like that. Even if they do appear, they'll only appear once in a century. Dugafeng, who rarely spoke, said very indifferently. Once I have the opportunity to go to those places in the future, I'll definitely go look around and see if there are any 10,000-year-old heavenly resources. Jianqin gently smiled. His wealth was enough to rival an entire kingdom, so he did not care about the heavenly resources at all. Bai Lian felt happy inside when she saw how much Jianqin cared about her. She smiled happily. At this moment, Jianqin suddenly looked at Tai Ta. He saw that Tai Ta remained silently seated on his magical beast. He seemed to be in a daze. Jianqin understood from Tai Ta's appearance that it would take some time for him to adapt to the environment on the Tianyuan continent with his honest personality. Tai Ta, you've seen what has happened in the past few days. This is the law of survival on the Tianyuan continent. It's the law of the jungle. Only the strong have the right to speak. If you want to survive here, you can only rely on your strength. There's no need to talk about feelings, Jianqin said to Tai Ta. Tai Ta raised his head and looked at Jianqin with a complicated gaze. He said, Jianqin, the outside world is just too cruel. It feels like a place of bandits. Jianqin chuckled and said, That's right, because this is how the world works. If you don't have strength, you will only be bullied by others. Only when you are strong, others will fear you and not dare to provoke you. The scene that just happened in the Jerry family is the best proof. Hee, big guy, I couldn't tell. You look so big and fierce, but your heart is so kind. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Ming Dong chuckled. Tai Ta blushed slightly when he heard Ming Dong's words, but he could not find anything to say. He could only choose to remain silent. Chen's gaze then landed on Yu, who was walking beside him. Yu was wearing a long white dress. Coupled with her devastatingly beautiful face and her natural, noble temperament, she was truly worthy of being a princess of a country. Jianqin looked at Yu with mixed feelings and guilt. He had no idea how he should treat his fiancée, because in his heart, whether it was Huang Wan, who he had a physical relationship with, or Yu, who had been engaged by his parents, he didn't have any thoughts about it. Until now, he hadn't considered the issue of personal relationships. This was because he had deeply experienced the way of life on the Tianyuan continent. Not to mention, he had made so many enemies in the outside world. There were plenty of saint rulers among them. They weighed down on Jianqin like a mountain, so Jianqin had no time to waste on romance. All he could do was focus on increasing his strength. Everyone below Saint Ruler was an ant. He understood that only when he reached the supreme realm of Saint Ruler would he have a foothold on the Tianyuan continent. However, Saint Ruler was not so easy to break through. Even though he had absorbed the fragments of the mysteries of the world in the sacred land of Mercenary City, he still needed a very long process to reach that level. You could not help but blush slightly when she sensed Jinchen's gaze on her. Her calm heart immediately began to thump like a little deer. She grumbled, "Jianchen, what's the matter?" Jianchen suddenly returned to his senses. He smiled brightly. This is the first time you ventured onto the Tianyuan continent. Are you used to the days of wandering around outside? You smiled sweetly. I like this kind of life very much. I get to see so many different sceneries and the vast world every day, as well as so many shocking and interesting things. It's not like staying in the Imperial Palace in the past, where all I can do is look at the same scenery over and over again. Even leaving the Imperial Palace once is so troublesome. Actually, when I read about the outside world in the library of Kargath Academy, I've always hoped that I would be able to wander the Tianyuan continent one day. It's finally come true now, Yu happily said. Jianchen gently sighed. Although the outside world is very interesting, it's extremely dangerous as well. There are people fighting to the death in various places on the Tianyuan continent at almost every moment. Countless people die every day. Actually, a peaceful life might be a form of enjoyment. Yu stared at Jianchen with mixed feelings. She grumbled, "Jianchen, your current strength and status are enough for you to gain a stable footing on the Tianyuan continent. So why don't you let go of the burden on your shoulders and properly enjoy yourself?" Sigh. Jianchen gently sighed. "The burden on my shoulders can't be let go just because I want to. There are some matters that need to be dealt with." "What are they? Can you tell me?" Yu asked curiously. Jianchen shook his head. "It's not that I don't want to tell you, but knowing these matters won't bring you any benefits. All right, let's talk about something else. I wonder what you think about the current situation of the Flame Mercenaries." They discussed the matter of the Flame Mercenaries as they hurried back to the inn. Although basically all the large organizations in the city had been subdued by Jianchen and the others still stayed in the same inn. Just as Jianchen and the others returned to the inn, the leaders of the organizations that had left the Jelly Clan all returned to their clans. The first thing they did when they returned was to get people to change the signboard above the entrance to the Flame Mercenaries. News of their shocking actions spread through the entire city at an unbelievable speed, shocking everyone in the city. At that moment, anyone with half a brain understood that the balance of power in the city had been completely broken. It had become a monopoly. The Flame Mercenaries that had only appeared in the city for 2 or 3 days had become well known in an extremely short amount of time. Discussions about the Flame Mercenaries could be heard in the entire city at any time. When the city lord of Cloud City received this news, he was stunned. His face was full of disbelief and horror. More than a dozen of the strongest forces in Cloud City had joined forces. Their strength had far surpassed the city lord's mansion. They were even comparable to the top forces of Blue Wind Kingdom. How could this not shock the city lord? At the same time, the city lord realized an extremely serious problem. Right now, the city lord's estate had basically become a decoration in Cloud Capital. Even if the Flame Mercenaries really wanted to do something in the city, there was nothing he could do. He could not stop them at all. Just who is the captain of the Flame Mercenaries? He's actually been able to subdue so many powerful organizations in such a short amount of time. Just what are they trying to do? The city lord's eyebrows were tightly furrowed. The growth of the Flame Mercenaries made him feel deeply uneasy. The Flame Mercenaries are no longer something we can deal with. I need to report this to the king. The city lord immediately picked up a brush and began to write, sending an extremely urgent secret letter back to the Imperial Palace. Half a day later, in the palace of the Blue Wind Kingdom, the king was sitting in his study room, reading the urgent secret letter from Cloud City. His face became more and more serious, and in the end, even his eyebrows were tightly knitted together. A while later, the king of the Blue Wind Kingdom gently put down the letter and murmured, "The Flame Mercenaries? Where did this mercenary organization come from? Why have I never heard of it before?" They're actually able to subdue over a dozen organizations with Earth Saint Masters in such a short amount of time. It's unbelievable. The king pondered with furrowed brows. The sudden appearance of the Flame Mercenaries had actually managed to subdue over a dozen first-rate organizations in just 3 short days. This had already attracted the king's attention. Suddenly, the king seemed to think of something. His eyes immediately lit up. "Don't tell me the Flame Mercenaries have a Heaven Saint Master?" "Only a Heaven Saint Master has the ability to subdue over a dozen first-rate organizations." After coming to this conclusion, His Majesty's face immediately became serious. He shouted to the outside, "Someone go and ask Master Ku Yin to come here right now." Very soon, a gray-robed old man strode in. The old man seemed to be in his 60s. He had white hair and a ruddy complexion. His eyes shone with interest. "Your Majesty, may I ask why you've summoned me?" The old man smiled at the king and did not bow. The king passed the letter in his hand over. "Master Ku Yin, take a look." The old man gently waved his hand, and the letter in the king's hand actually flew toward him. It landed firmly in his hand, and he immediately began to read it. Very soon, a sliver of surprise appeared in the old man's eyes. He murmured, "The Flame Mercenaries are not simple. They're actually able to subdue over a dozen first-rate organizations in just 3 days. Since they possess such strength, why have I never heard of them before?" Chapter 588. Your Majesty, you mean to say that we should eliminate this force? The old man probed. The king pondered for a moment before replying, "There's no need to eliminate them. If our Blue Wind Kingdom gains an expert like that, it'll naturally be our kingdom's fortune. However, I'm afraid that he's an outsider. Once our Blue Wind Kingdom grows stronger, he'll leave with this force. If that happens, our Blue Wind Kingdom will lose quite a bit of strength. We've just experienced a great battle with the Kingdom of Jessin, and our kingdom's strength is weak. I definitely won't let something like that happen at a time like this." "Then what does your Majesty mean?" the old man asked. "Master Ku Yin, I'll have to trouble you again this time. I hope that you can personally investigate the background of the Flame Mercenaries and see what their goal is. If they only want to stay in the Blue Wind Kingdom and develop, then I'll obviously welcome them. However, if they want to take away the strength of the Blue Wind Kingdom or do something detrimental to our kingdom, then you must stop them with lightning speed. You can't be merciful," the king sternly said. The old man nodded and replied, "I understand. I know what to do." With that, the old man turned around and left. "Master Ku Yin, please wait." The king stopped the old man and said, "Master Ku Yin, I'm worried that there will be a Heaven Saint Master in the Flame Mercenaries, so it's best if you bring someone with you when you go to Cloud Capital this time." "Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty." Ku Yin turned around and clasped his hands at the king with a smile. Afterward, he strode out of the study with his head held high. The king watched Ku Yin leave as a sliver of worry gradually appeared on his face. He murmured, "Why do I feel uneasy? Is it because of the Flame Mercenaries? Could it be that the sudden appearance of the Flame Mercenaries is a great disaster to our Blue Wind Kingdom?" Thinking up to this point, the king's face became extremely stern. He sighed. "In the battle of the Kingdom of Jessin, only 4 of the 8 Heaven Saint Masters of our Blue Wind Kingdom remain. The other experts have also suffered heavy casualties. They can't endure much more. I hope that my premonition is wrong." Cloud Capital had been in an uproar for the past 2 days. Whether it was in the streets or in the inns, one could hear countless people discussing the Flame Mercenaries at all times. The Flame Mercenaries seemed to have appeared out of thin air in Cloud Capital City before quickly ruling over a dozen first-rate organizations in the city. This caused an extremely great commotion in Cloud Capital City. Some of the second- and third-rate organizations in the city became extremely nervous as well. They lived their days in fear and trepidation. There were even a few small organizations that chose to temporarily leave the city to avoid the brunt of the storm and return after the storm passed. They were deeply afraid that the flame mercenaries would extend their claws towards them, so they were unwilling to give up their authority and become someone's lackey. However, not everyone in these second- and third-rate organizations was like this. Some organizations had even taken the initiative to find a dozen or so first-rate organizations that had submitted to the Flame Mercenaries to join the Flame Mercenaries. The leaders of the first-rate organizations had also received Jianshin's orders. They did not turn down any of the small organizations that had taken the initiative to join, accepting them all. The Flame Mercenaries needed fresh blood and large amounts of manpower far too much right now. Jianshin was not worried about management at all. Since the leaders of the first-rate organizations had the ability to create their own organizations, they obviously had the ability to manage their own groups. Seeing more and more clans and organizations join the Flame Mercenaries, the city lord of Cloud Capital was unable to become happy no matter what. He became more and more worried, but he had no power to stop the severe situation in the city. All he could do was make an extremely helpless choice and watch silently from the side. His only hope was to wait for the intervention of the higher-ups. Fortunately, Anna's wild beast mercenaries have all left for a mission. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have been able to avoid being swallowed up. The city lord murmured. Time continued to pass. In the blink of an eye, for days had passed since the Flame Mercenaries had swallowed up a dozen first-rate organizations. By now, the matter in Cloud Capital had already spread throughout the entire Wind Blue Kingdom. Everyone in the various cities knew about it. At the same time, all sorts of rumors about the Flame Mercenaries were flying everywhere. However, no matter what the rumors were, this foreshadowed an important piece of information. Another peak organization had appeared in the Wind Blue Kingdom. In the first-rate city of Sky Dragon City, 1,000 miles away, a middle-aged man in his 40s, wearing white robes, stood in front of a pool of water with his hands behind his back. He was the city lord of Sky Dragon City. The city lord of Sky Dragon City stood there in a daze as he muttered, "Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Who would have thought that a small mercenary group from Wake City would actually possess such great strength?" In just a few short days, they had made all the first-rate organizations in Cloud Capital submit to them. Unbelievable. In a luxurious room in the city lord's estate, Katata and Katafii sat at a table drinking wine. Katata downed the wine in his cup in one gulp and said, "Katafii, you should know about what happened in Cloud Capital, right? I wonder if the Flame Mercenaries that appeared in Cloud Capital is the same as the one from Wake City." "Yes," Katafii replied with a straight face. It was as if he never smiled and was a man of few words. "How are you so sure?" Katata asked. "Jianshin's strength is unknown. He has a sixth cycle, Earth Saint Master, as his subordinate. It's them," Katafii said expressionlessly. However, from the seriousness and shock in his eyes, one could tell that he was not as calm as he appeared on the surface. Katata downed his cup and sighed. "It's really hard to believe. It's only been 2 years since we last met, and Jianshin has already achieved so much. However, I heard that he went to participate in the mercenary gathering 2 years ago. Could it be that he obtained some great benefits there? It's a pity that we're just too far away from Mercenary City. Unless it's something extremely important, we can't get here." Within a luxurious inn in Cloud Capital, Jianshin sat on the bed and cultivated. Only the bored, white tiger rolled around on the soft bed. The expensive sheets and blankets had all been torn to shreds by its sharp claws. In the past few days, Jianshin had not left the inn at all. He had basically spent all his time cultivating. He was waiting for the leaders of the various organizations to recover from their injuries and deal with the matters of their clans before leaving cloud capital. Captain of the Flame Mercenaries, quickly come out and greet us. At this moment, a thunderous voice rang out from the sky. The voice was so loud that it reverberated through the surroundings. It caused the streets to tremble and the buildings to shake. Even the clouds in the sky were shaken. Everyone in the city heard the majestic voice that seemed to come from a god. The entire city fell silent at first before suddenly erupting with a deafening noise. Everyone raised their heads to look at the sky, as if they were searching for something. I see it. There are two people hovering in the sky. They're peak heaven Saint Masters. Suddenly, an excited voice rang out. A middle-aged man pointed at the sky as he cried out emotionally. Everyone looked over when they heard the voice. Sure enough, they discovered that there were two figures that were the size of ants in the sky above Cloud Capital. They were like gods that had descended to the mortal world. There's actually two Heaven Saint Masters. They must have come for the Flame Mercenaries. The Flame Mercenaries are done for. The Flame Mercenaries have caused a disaster. Look at how aggressive the two Heaven Saint Masters are. They must have come to wipe out the Flame Mercenaries. Everyone discussed with each other. Many people rejoiced in the misfortune of the Flame Mercenaries, but a few organizations that had already joined the Flame Mercenaries paled. The city lord hurriedly ran out of the hall in the city lord's estate. He excitedly looked at the two Heaven Saint Masters in the sky and said, "Two Heaven Saint Masters. His Majesty has actually sent two Heaven Saint Masters. Fantastic, fantastic. The Flame Mercenaries are finally done for." Over a dozen Earth Saint Masters who had already joined the Flame Mercenaries emerged from various places in the city. Their expressions all changed when they saw the two Heaven Saint Masters hovering in the sky. The people who had joined the Flame Mercenaries under Jianshin were obviously overjoyed, while the people who had joined of their own accord were all worried. A single Heaven Saint Master was already impressive enough. Now that two had come, they felt extremely pressured. Within the inn, Jianshin slowly opened his eyes and frowned slightly. At this moment, the door was pushed open and Mingdong and the others all walked in. "Jianshin, two Heaven Saint Masters have come. They're extremely arrogant, even swaggering in the sky. It's as if they're afraid that no one knows who they are. Humph, if they dare to come down, I'll beat them until they vomit blood and flee," Mingdong sneered. Heaven Saint Masters were no longer undefeatable existences in his eyes. "Captain of the Flame Mercenaries, hurry up and come out to see us. Don't hide in the city like a coward." At this moment, a thunderous voice rang out in the sky again. It was extremely loud. Mingdong's face suddenly sank. He furiously said, "God damn it, who is this? They're just too arrogant." Chapter 589. In the sky, the two Heaven Saint Masters of the Blue Wind Kingdom stood in a condescending manner, looking down like gods. On the street below, countless people raised their heads to look at the sky. They stared at the two experts in admiration and yearning. Their faces were filled with unconcealable envy. Heaven Saint Master was a realm of cultivation that countless mercenaries yearned to reach. However, reaching this level of cultivation was easier said than done. The entire Blue Wind Kingdom had a population of several 100 million, but there were less than 10 experts at their peak. At this moment, a faint azure figure shot up into the sky from below. In the blink of an eye, it had reached 500 meters in the air and faced the two Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom with a distance of 20 meters. It was so fast that many people on the street were unable to see where it had come from or when it had arrived. "Everyone look. Another Heaven Saint Master has appeared. Is he the captain of the Flame Mercenaries? He must be the captain of the Flame Mercenaries. I never thought that he would be a peak Heaven Saint Master as well. The captain of the Flame Mercenaries is so fast. I couldn't see where he came from at all. He must be extremely powerful. Humph, our Blue Wind Kingdom has sent a total of 2 Heaven Saint Masters this time. No matter how powerful the captain of the flame mercenaries is, it's impossible for him to be the opponent of two Heaven Saint Masters. The scene in the sky attracted the attention of everyone in the city. At this moment, everyone put down what they were doing to watch the wonderful show that was about to take place in the sky. There were bursts of noisy discussions everywhere, and the roads in the city were seriously blocked. In the city lord's estate, Lord sternly stared at the third Heaven Saint Master who had appeared in the sky. He mumbled, "The captain of the flame mercenaries really is a Heaven Saint Master!" In various parts of Cloud Capital, the leaders of the first-rate forces were also focused on the three figures in the sky that were as small as ants. In their hearts, they were also hoping for an exciting battle to break out between the three of them. Several hundred meters in the sky, Jianchen faced the two Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom with a distance of 20 meters between them. "The captain of the Blazing Flame Mercenaries is here. What do the two of you need?" Jianchen's gaze was sharp as he mocked. The eyes of the two Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom were wide open as they stared at Jianchen's familiar yet terrifying face. Their faces became extremely ugly as well as some hatred. "You're the captain of the Raging Flame Mercenaries?" A Heaven Saint Master said sternly. He was no longer able to maintain his composure from before. Jianchen sneered and said, "That's right, it's me." "You too. May I know why you called me out?" Jianchen's eyes gradually emitted traces of murderous intent. Sensing Jianchen's murderous intent, the two Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom felt their hearts tighten as they immediately went on high alert. The scene from back in the kingdom of Jessen clearly flashed through their minds. At that time, it was this young man who had killed several experts from the Blue Wind Kingdom and the Qiangan Kingdom. In the end, only 4 of the 8 Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom managed to escape. Although the person before them was young, the 2 Heaven Saint Masters did not dare to underestimate him at all. This was because they were not absolutely confident that they could defeat him. "The situation is bad. Let's go." The 2 Heaven Saint Masters did not hesitate at all. They turned around and flew away because they could already feel Jianchen's murderous intent grow stronger and stronger. They knew that if they continued to stay, a battle would erupt sooner or later. The 2 of them did not want to fight several Heaven Saint Masters in a row. "You want to leave? Not so easy." Jianchen sneered. He did not plan to let the 2 of them go so easily. Grabbing at the air with both hands, 2 fire elemental swords condensed in his hands. He then shot them at the 2 escaping Heaven Saint Masters with lightning speed. Sensing the movement behind them, the 2 Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom felt their hearts sink. They thought to themselves, "This battle is unavoidable in the end." The 2 of them reacted extremely quickly. With a thought, the earth and water elemental energy in the surroundings rapidly condensed in their hands. In the blink of an eye, they condensed into 2 huge dragons. Seeing the 2 of them actually compete with him in controlling the yuan qi of the world, Jianchen could not help but have a mocking expression on his face. He sneered, "The fire elemental energy is the element with the strongest attack out of the 6 elements. Even the saint force of the light attribute and the saint force of the darkness attribute cannot compare to it in terms of attack. You actually dare to compete with me in terms of elemental energy? You are really asking for trouble." Hearing this, the expert controlling the earth dragon did not say a word. He suddenly pushed out with both hands. The earth dragon in his hands immediately roared towards the sky and charged forward with an unstoppable momentum. The fire elemental energy is indeed the element with the strongest attack out of the 6 elements. "But my water can extinguish your fire," the other expert sneered. The water dragon condensed in front of him also suddenly attacked. It opened its bloody mouth and bit at the incoming fire elemental sword. Boom! The earth dragon was the first to collide with the fire elemental sword. With a loud bang, the earth dragon was smashed into pieces. It turned into yuan qi of the world and dissipated in the surroundings. The fire elemental sword that collided with the earth dragon had also shrunk a lot. It had shrunk from 5 meters to 1 meter. It continued to fly towards the old man. Soon after, a second loud bang rang out. The second fire elemental sword collided with the water dragon. The majestic water dragon directly exploded. It turned into a flood that covered the sky and wrapped around the fire elemental sword. It tried to extinguish it. Chi, 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 chi. Water and fire, these two incompatible attributes, were fiercely competing in midair, constantly emitting chi-chi sounds. Only a thick mist could be seen rising, as if a thick smoke was covering the sky, blocking everyone's line of sight. No one could see the scene inside the clear mist. Cloud Capital, this bustling and bustling city, seemed to have become a lifeless city of death at this moment. The entire city was silent. People were standing on the streets, roofs, and all the buildings. Everyone was holding their breaths and watching the battle in the sky attentively. Ming Dong, De Gafong, and the others also stood on the roofs of the taverns. They raised their heads and watched a battle in the sky. However, Ming Dong, De Gafong, and you were all relaxed. They did not worry about Jianshin's safety at all because they knew just how powerful Jianshin was, let alone 2 Heaven Saint Masters. Even 2 times as many of them would not be able to do anything to him. Only Bai Lian, who did not know Jianshin's exact strength, became nervous. She felt like her heart was in her throat. She was extremely worried for her brother's safety. Although she knew that her brother was also a Heaven Saint Master, his opponents were 2 peak experts who had been renowned for a very long time. Tai Ta's expression was the same as Bai Lian's. Boom! In the sky, there was another thunderous sound. The expert whose earthen dragon was defeated took out his own saint weapon, shattering the fire elemental sword that was shooting towards him. He turned into flames and dissipated into the air. At this moment, the battle between water and fire had ended. The rising mist had become thinner, and the sizzling sound had stopped. The water dragon, condensed from the water elements, had been completely evaporated by the scorching flames, leaving not a single drop behind. The fire elemental sword wasn't unscathed either. Its size had shrunk by half, shrinking from 5 meters long to 2 meters long. What powerful flames! The expression of the expert who unleashed the water dragon changed slightly. Just as he finished speaking, the fire elemental sword that defeated the water dragon turned into a fiery red light and flashed away, continuing to shoot towards him at an extremely fast speed. The expert didn't dare to be careless. He also drew his own saint weapon, and only then did he shatter the remaining fire element sword. He then glared at Jianshin and yelled, "Since you're so overbearing, then don't be so quick. We won't hold back anymore. Ku Yin, let's use our battle skills together." Ku Yin nodded sternly. Now that the situation had developed like this, they had to do their best regardless of whether they were right or wrong. After making up their minds, the 2 of them did not hesitate at all. They immediately began to use their Earth-tier battle skills. With their strength as Heaven Saint Masters, using Earth-tier battle skills was a piece of cake. They did not need much time to charge up at all. Earth-tier battle skill, Earth God's War Hammer. Earth-tier battle skill, Rampaging Sword Chi. The 2 of them finished using their Earth-tier battle skills at the same time. Ku Yin raised a 10-meter-long hammer, completely condensed from Earth-attributed Saint Force, and smashed it toward Jianshin. The other expert constantly swung the sword in his hand. Sword Chi filled the sky and enveloped Jianshin. Jianshin's eyes suddenly turned purple and green. The purple and green light flickered like 2 dancing will-o'-the-wisps. It was incomparably evil. All of a sudden, countless stones, bricks, and some other miscellaneous items flew up from the city below. They flickered with faint purple and green light as they flew towards the sword chi that filled the sky. At the same time, the origin energy of the sword spirits transformed into a sword that appeared in Jianshin's right hand. With the sword in hand, Jianqin's entire aura underwent an earth-shattering change. He was like an unsheathed sword, radiating with a sharp aura. With a flash of green light, Jianqin's body left behind an afterimage in the air. The sword in his hand that had been condensed from the origin energy of the sword spirits charged toward Ku Yan's hammer. With a light swing of the sword, the huge hammer was actually as fragile as tofu. It was easily cut in half. With the hammer destroyed, Ku Yan's earth tier battle skill was also broken. The surging earth attributed Saint Force turned into strands of energy that dissipated into the surroundings. Chapter 590. A muffled groan came from Ku Yan's throat as his originally ruddy face instantly turned pale. Seeing Ku Yan's chest being pierced by Jianqin's sword, the other expert's expression suddenly changed. He immediately let out a loud roar, and a large amount of sword chi erupted from his saint weapon, blocking the countless rocks that Jianqin controlled with his mind. He then raised his saint weapon and attacked Jianqin, trying to save Ku Yan. Jianqin glanced at the expert flying towards him from the corner of his eyes, and a disdainful sneer appeared on his face. He said, "The person who just told me to get out must be you. Today, don't even think about leaving." Jianqin pulled out the origin energy of the azure and violet sword spirits from Ku Yan's chest and shot it towards the incoming expert like a bolt of lightning. Ding! 2 rays of light, one purple and one green, collided with the saint weapon, producing a crisp sound. Facing the powerful origin energy of the azure and violet sword spirits, the saint weapon of the Heaven Saint Master was as weak as a tile and was cut open by the origin energy. PFFF! The saint weapon was damaged, causing the expert to be affected as well, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Jianqin's hand did not stop at all as the second strike followed. With his powerful physical strength, the speed of the sword was as fast as lightning. A small ray of light flashed, and before the opponent could react, the origin energy had already pierced through his head, directly shattering his soul and destroying his body and soul. Bala! Ku Yan let out a cry of surprise as he looked at the expert, whose head had been pierced through with a sorrowful expression. He knew that from this moment onwards, the Blue Wind Kingdom would have one less Heaven Saint Master. Ba'ele's head had been pierced through by the origin energy of the azure and violet sword spirits. The soul in his head rapidly dissipated, and his eyes gradually became hollow. In the end, his entire body fell from the sky. Jianqin's eyes were sharp, and his hands were fast. He took the space ring from Ba'ele's finger and held it in his hand. He then turned to the sorrowful Ku Yan and expressionlessly said, "I originally wanted to kill you directly, but in the end, I decided to spare your life. When you return, tell your king to stay away from the matters of the flame mercenaries, or don't blame me for what happens next." As he spoke, the origin energy of the azure and violet sword spirits in Jianqin's hand quickly faded and disappeared. Ku Yan's facial muscles constantly twitched as he stared at the young man in front of him in both shock and fear. His voice trembled as he said, "The war between the kingdom of Jessin and our Blue Wind Kingdom has already ended. We've also given you a large amount of compensation. Ba-La had no enmity with you, so why did you kill him?" Jianqin coldly laughed. Disaster comes from the mouth. Remember to be careful with your words in the future. You can leave now. Don't forget to pass those words to your esteemed king. With that, Jianqin turned around and flew away. His body rapidly descended from the sky and returned to the inn. Ku Yan blankly floated in the air as he stared at his feet with a sorrowful expression. He saw the other Heaven Saint Master who had come with him, Bala, lying motionlessly on the street below. There was already a large pool of blood there. The surroundings of Ba'ele's corpse were already filled with people. Everyone stared at the corpse on the ground in shock as they blankly stared at it. Ku Yan descended from the sky and left with Ba'ele's corpse. He soared through the sky and left Cloudhaven with a miserable expression. The two of them had come to Cloudhaven with great momentum, but in the end, only one of them returned alive. Although the battle in the sky had ended, the entire cloud capital was still as silent as a city of the dead. Not a single sound could be heard. Countless merchants and mercenaries stood on the streets in the same manner as before. They stared blankly at the empty sky, as if they were still intoxicated by the previous battle and had yet to recover from it. On the street, where Baku had just been, more than a dozen figures rapidly flew over from the distance. In the end, they all stopped around the pool of blood with blank expressions. These dozen or so people were the leaders of the dozen or so first-rate forces in Cloud Capital City. Among them was the city lord of Cloud Capital City. However, no one knew what they were feeling at this moment. Jianchen returned to the inn and sat on the same bed as before. However, there was now a hole above his head that allowed him to see the sky. Jianchen's group descended from the roof and arrived at Jianchen's room. As soon as they entered, they heard Bai Lian's excited cries, "Wah, brother, you're just too powerful. You managed to chase away 2 Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom." Bai Lian was extremely excited. Her gaze toward Jianchen was filled with admiration. He had fought against 2 Heaven Saint Masters all by himself and emerged unscathed. In her eyes, he was basically invincible. Only now did she suddenly realize that her brother was much more powerful than she had imagined him to be. Wrong. It's because one is dead and one is injured. If your brother hadn't let the last person go, he wouldn't have been able to leave here alive, corrected Ming Dong. Bai Lian became even more excited when she heard Ming Dong's words. She felt extremely proud that she had such a powerful brother. Sima Yuyu, who was standing to the side, looked at Jianchen with a look of infatuation. However, she soon noticed the huge hole in Jianchen's head and said gently, "Jianchen, you've broken the roof of the room. You should change to another one to rest." Jianchen raised his head to look at the roof and awkwardly smiled. "Yeah, I should change to another room." Jianchen and the others did not care about what was happening outside. They did not know that the outside world had been thrown into chaos. The battle between the captain of the Flame Mercenaries and the 2 Peak Heaven Saint Masters of the Blue Wind Kingdom alone had attracted the attention of countless people in the city. The scene of one of the Heaven Saint Masters dying and the other being injured had been clearly seen by many people with extraordinary eyesight. This matter caused an extremely great commotion in the city. The news spread through the entire kingdom at an unbelievable speed. In just half a day, it had reached every corner of the Blue Wind Kingdom in an unbelievable manner, shocking everyone. The leaders of the peak organizations in the Blue Wind Kingdom attached great importance to this matter as well. They immediately sent experts to the Cloud Capital to investigate the authenticity of the news. However, the incident this time further strengthened the Flame Mercenary Group's position in the Blue Wind Kingdom. If it was before, the Flame Mercenary Group's subjugation of a first-class city would have attracted a lot of attention, then the incident this time would have made everyone feel terrified. In the Imperial Palace of the Blue Wind Kingdom, Ku Yun held the corpse of his companion in his arms as he met the king of the Blue Wind Kingdom in the Grand Hall. He told the king everything that had happened in the Cloud Capital, including the message that Jianchen had asked him to pass on to the king. After hearing the story, the king of the Blue Wind Kingdom sighed at the sky. At that moment, he seemed to have aged a lot. His Majesty the King was silent for a long time, then slowly opened his mouth and said, "Since we can't stop it, then don't interfere. Alas, the strength of my Blue Wind Kingdom is already declining. Now after this mess, our strength is destined to decline again." Several days later, a long group of people passed through the gates of the Cloud Capital. They set off towards the outside of the city. Within the group, a large number of flags fluttered in the wind. Whether it was the size or appearance of the flags, they were all the same. There was a burning flame embroidered on each flag. This group was the Flame Mercenaries. Currently, the Flame Mercenary Group had already reached a certain scale. The members of the mercenary group had expanded from the initial lone members to over 5,000 members. It was already a large-scale mercenary group in the Blue Wind Kingdom, and its overall strength was not the slightest bit inferior to the top forces of the Blue Wind Kingdom. At the very front of the group, Jianqin, Mingdong, Tai Ta, Dugafeng, Yu, and Bai Lian rode side by side on their magical beast mounts. However, their Class 3 magical beasts had all been replaced by Class 4 magical beasts. These Class 4 magical beasts had all been donated by the leaders of a dozen or so organizations. Now, the leaders of these dozen or so factions had completely accepted their new identities and sincerely considered themselves to be part of the Flame Mercenaries. This was because not only had they found a powerful backer, but they had also obtained the Earth Tier battle skill that they had always desired. They even had hopes of obtaining the Heaven Tier battle skill that even Heaven Saint Masters coveted. Just how enticing was this? It was like a pie had fallen from the sky. Even to Heaven Saint Masters, it was fatally attractive, let alone them. As a result, they accepted their new identities without any hesitation. This time, they did it completely willingly, without any reluctance. "Captain, where are we going next?" Zhan Tian asked from the back. "Heavenly Dragon City is relatively close." "Let's go there," Jianqin replied. In the following days, the Flame Mercenaries expanded wildly in the Blue Wind Kingdom. In an extremely short amount of time, they subdued all the first-rate organizations in the first-class cities of the Blue Wind Kingdom, causing their strength to rapidly increase. After sweeping through several first-class cities, the Flame Mercenaries now had over 30,000 members. There were close to 100 Earth Saint Masters as well. They had basically emptied out all the experts in the Blue Wind Kingdom.